Today on Doomed! Mail person, delivery driver, medical personnel, and professional wrestler? Apparently, all those things are essential in the age of the coronavirus pandemic. How did the WWE World Wrestling Entertainment get the pass to keep on filming out of their performance center in Florida when practically anything but food, medicine, and other essentials were shut down? We're going to find that out today on Doomed, ladies and gentlemen. Happy May Day if you're watching live. Happy belated May Day if you're listening to this later. You could support this show at patreon.com/MattBinder. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/MattBinder. And if you're watching live, you can do the old YouTube Super Chats, and I will get to your comments first. You could ask me and my guest any question. I'll make sure I get to it live on the show. And without any further ado, my guest for this episode, honestly, who else would I go to for professional wrestling news than my dear pal, David Bixenspan? He is a journalist who is probably, I honestly can't think of anyone else, truly, who covers professional wrestling the way he does. He is beyond the dirt sheets, into the real news media, bringing you everything you need to know about professional wrestling. David Bixenspan, how you doing, buddy?
Doing okay. I decided to give you a little bit of an improvised solution here, so I don't have to be seen wearing my backwards neck pillow the whole show.
Right. If you're not watching live on the YouTube feed, usually David likes to get comfortable during our conversations because they could go long. So he gets comfy. Doesn't usually want to, I'm not MSNBC, CNN, Fox News. Not important enough for this guy to sit in front of his computer, get out of bed for. So, but today he's blessed us with a photo of himself.
Yes, a cropped photo of me and Mance Warner at the No Holds Barred show a few months ago.
You know what? It's better than nothing. At least you're not a voice from the heavens on the YouTube, Twitch, Periscope live streams.
I'm not an avatar with the thing lighting up around it like Hal in 2001.
Right. Now, David, usually when I have you on this show, for my audience, it could go either way. Either I'm having you on for something that you need to know nothing about wrestling, but it's just how wrestling has woven itself into the politics of today. I mean, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, is good friends with Vince McMahon, the owner of World Wrestling Entertainment. But then there's other times I have you on where it's still political, but you need to be a little bit more into the wrestling knowledge, I guess you can say, to really get what's going on. And I try to make it for everyone, but everyone knows who listens. I'm a wrestling fan, so sometimes you and me, we get into the weeds. But yes, on this episode, you can know nothing about wrestling and totally understand what's going on here. And also, this shit is crazy. I mean, it is nuts. And you don't need to be a wrestling fan to think this. So we really have to rewind here. Let's really take it back to the early days of the shutdowns, lockdowns, stay-at-home orders, self-quarantines, where in early to mid-March, people are starting to realize this coronavirus shit is a thing. It's not just something we're hearing about that's happening in faraway places overseas like China or Italy or Iran. And there's a real question about what's going to happen to live events. I remember where I was when that first that bit of info came in where the NBA said season is postponed. And that first NBA player, you probably know his name, I can't remember, came out.
I literally just saw it like an hour ago and then I forgot. But No, for the record, WWE did not have a guy who was like, "Ooh, maybe I have coronavirus," and started touching everything, and then turned out to actually have coronavirus. No, thankfully that has not happened in
Right,
WWE.
well, yeah. Honestly, I think it is worse. uh, so, so let's start from that time period, David,
Yes.
when the first, I guess, serious organizations decide, the responsible organizations decide, uh, something's going on here, and we got to do something different. What did the WWE decide to do?
So, what WWE decided to do once their hands were tied, which was, oh, I don't remember what city it was, but it was a live SmackDown. And it was a weird situation, too, where WWE took the very WWE tact of denying that the live event. Oh, it was Detroit. It was Detroit. I believe the local news had announced the show was canceled. I think the Wednesday night before the Friday night SmackDown, and WWE was denying it. And then the next day they announced it themselves. That what they were doing was the live event would be canceled in Detroit, and instead they would be taping television at their Performance Center, which is the very WWE name for their training center in Orlando, which has always been outfitted to be able to shoot TV at. And in fact, by sheer coincidence, was being used for a TV shoot that week for, I think, only the second time, or at least a live TV shoot, I should say, because
Uh, already dropping out. Already dropping out on me. Let's try this again. Hello? I already lost him. Unbelievable. 1 second, folks. Bloop, bloop. It happens. What you gonna do? So how's everyone doing tonight? Uh-oh. I think he might have lost his internet completely. Now, here's the deal. He actually warned me before we went live that he was having internet troubles today. So, what we're going to do is we're going to give him a second to fire up, because we have a backup plan, to fire up plan B. And we'll take it from there, because he's not doing video. We can just take the audio. This will all work out. Even if we don't end up doing it over Skype, I could bring him in through the phone. Just give him a second. So how's everyone doing tonight? It's May Day. We're doing well, says Lord Arion. Oh, heads up, super chat. Oh, here we go. Here he is. Let's see. Hello.
yes, all right, fuck this.
Oh, you're live on camera right now. Is that fine?
Yes, that's the idea.
Oh, nice.
Because at least with my phone, it's more comfortable. The lighting here, you can tell, kind of sucks.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry. You'll honestly look like someone who is holding their phone up to do a Skype call. Literally, how everyone looks like when they're holding up their phone to do some sort of call.
Yeah, so at least, I mean, this way, if I drop off again, I would think the cellular connection will.
He's just dropped off again. Do you want to just... All right. Give it one more try. You.
No, it was handing off back to the Wi-Fi that time, I think, because it was coming back.
Why don't you shut off the Wi-Fi? Because I think it sounds fine through the cellular. Like, you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, so it won't cut off. Okay, sure. All right.
You. Hello?
All right.
All right, cool. You're on the cellular now?
Yes.
All right, so we should have no more problems. We should have no more problems, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get to it. You were at the part where so they just worded came in from Detroit where that SmackDown was supposed to be held.
Yes. So instead of doing a show in Detroit, what they decided to do was to do a show at the WWE Performance Center, which is the very WWE corporate speak name for their training center in Orlando, which had already happened to be set up for a TV shoot that week because Full Sail University, where they normally shoot NXT on Wednesday nights, had some kind of prior scheduled engagement. So the idea was always that it was going to be at the Performance Center that week. And they did this kind of mix of a couple matches and some stuff that hadn't aired before, like from pay-per-views. And was that was the night Austin did the weird closing comedy segment because it was March 16th, right? That was the first show.
Was that the first one? I thought that was the second one. I don't even remember, honestly.
Oh, wait, that was a Raw. That's right. So this would have been... So that would have been the...
Friday,
so it would have been 3 days.
Prior Friday, so
it would have been... It was Friday the 13th, ominously enough. Yes. So, I don't remember what they ended up closing that show with. But it was what it was, but no one was really sure how much more of these there were going to be. And then it became clear all of them. And that's how they've been handling it since all this started. Although NXT has been back at Full Sail, I don't know if it's a time management thing to not tape them all in one place. I don't know if it's a not having everyone in the same place thing. That's actually by design with all this, but that is taped at a separate location. And then, taped is a curious word right now, which we'll get into. And
so when was the last WWE live event with fans in the audience? Was it that NXT show where they had the
so that would have been on the 11th, I think so. Yes.
That's odd. Like that's just like what a stroke of luck for them that they would hold something very similar to what they would be doing later on. For the first time before anyone knew this was going to happen, like literally right before it all happened.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be able to do it anyway because the Performance Center has always been there's always been the idea that they'd be able to do TV shoots from it. But yeah, that was some fortuitous timing though. And like the empty chairs were still out, and that was one of the things they've changed, which was that at first they left empty chairs up and they were shooting right into it, and it wasn't distracting you at all from what was going on. And then they turned where the main camera was around and all that. And it made for a better show, but there's still something missing, and you need it to be wrestled and laid out in a way that's specific to that environment. And then, meanwhile, Rival All Elite Wrestling, they did 2 shows at Daly's Place, which is the outdoor amphitheater that the Khan family owns adjacent to what's the name of their NFL stadium? TIAA Bank Field, I think. And they did 2 shows there, first with wrestlers around ringside, second not. And then they taped several weeks in a big block at QT Marshall's wrestling school near Atlanta, which they dressed up for TV relatively well. And then next Wednesday, they're back to doing weekly live shows, and again, back from Jacksonville, because Florida, as we'll get into.
Right. So wrestling pretty much continued on when everything else pretty much stopped, at least in terms of sporting events and live entertainment. I mean, whether you consider WWE either or, they're, I guess, technically both, they were the only ones, both WWE and AEW.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, UFC tried, but that's a whole nother story.
Right, we'll get to that too, actually, because that's an interesting one. So,
yes.
So this all first happens. WWE and AEW keep the show going on. They, traveling around, doing what they could without fans in attendance at pretty much, empty arenas, WWE in their Performance Center. And there was a lot of talk about, because this is right before WrestleMania, and there was a lot of talk at the time what was going to happen with WrestleMania. Obviously it was going to be canceled. There was a whole issue with people getting their money back from all the events that happened around WrestleMania at the time, the non-WWE sanctioned events that happened. I know WrestleCon had issues with the various different venues and hotels to try to get their money back. But there was a strong push for WrestleMania to be outright canceled. But the WWE went ahead with it as a 2-night event out of the Performance Center.
Yes.
Why did it go ahead when it seems like it was early? This is the first weekend in April, WrestleMania, and I feel like this is when everyone knew this shit was going to be bad. And I feel like it was like approaching the peak in a lot of areas at that time. And they were holding this big show with all these wrestling talent in attendance at the Performance Center. And why? What happened there? Why did it even, what was the reasoning for this to go on?
Well, we have to back up a little bit, though, because you have to remember, leading up to this, and really this is part of the larger conversation we're having really in a big way, when it came to whether or not either the state of Florida or the city of Tampa would force their hand, because Tampa was the host city scheduled for this year, who had won the bid, Tampa and WWE were basically playing chicken. Me and basically everyone else kept using the same phrase, that Tampa was like leaving it up to WWE. WWE clearly did not want to have to make the decision themselves, whether just for appearances or for insurance reasons or whatever, which hard to say, because if South by Southwest didn't have an insurance plan that would cover their losses for a cancellation in the event of something like this, I'm not sure WWE would for WrestleMania.
Right.
And I just accidentally flipped the camera. What did I do?
There you go. You're back.
There we go. Okay. I accidentally double tapped the thing where it shows my face on the Skype call.
It's all good, man. It's all good. It's one of those days, one of those days. I'm feeling it too.
Yes,
I feel like all this is really starting to get to me. Like, I feel like it got to me in the beginning a little bit, like it was weird, but it still felt new. And then there got to a point where it sort of felt like maybe this won't be so bad. It's feeling like a routine. But now it's getting to the point where I honestly am just feeling like exhausted all the time. Like,
yes, exactly.
It's like it's like, all right, this is rough.
Yes. Okay. So yes, back to WrestleMania. So hard to say with the insurance thing. But they ended up, I don't even remember. I don't think Tampa entirely forced their hand. The thing is, it would have been better for the non-WWE promoters for the city to force their hand, because WWE canceling isn't going to trigger, the force majeure clauses in their contracts in and of itself. Like, when it got to the point where the city was making rulings anyway, so they kept going back and forth as far as who was going to make who do what, and then eventually they made this call. I think part of it was just they knew they were going to keep doing shows and they needed to keep the storylines moving, and also they probably weren't very bullish on there being in stadium WrestleMania anytime soon, which, if that was the case, they were, that was probably the right call. Right. In that sense, at least. And so they end up doing this big block of tapings that culminates in WrestleMania, and then they took a little bit of time off. And
why still hold WrestleMania? Like, I know at that point it's just a name pretty much, but why hold WrestleMania even at that point? Why not just postpone everything? Why not just say we'll come to Tampa for next year's WrestleMania? We'll just put everything on hold and just push everything back. It seems like it'd be a simple solution. All those people who have tickets and flights and all that would be able to just move their things too.
I don't know. Again, I mean, my gut is part. Who know? I don't know if any of that would play into insurance or anything like that. But I think part of it's probably that they were looking long term and thinking that they were not going to be able to run anytime soon. So it's better to just have something and keep moving.
Right. Now I want to focus because I think we're now at the point where I think it's starting to get obvious to a lot of people that
yes.
This is now, those first few tapings, it's like, oh, look, they're keeping it going. They're keeping people entertained while this is all happening. But then people start to realize that this was going to be a real thing. Like, this wasn't no longer the precautionary measures. This was the real deal. And I think a lot of people started saying, what's going on with the talent? These wrestlers are being asked to fly in from all over the world to Florida. Like, these guys don't all live in Florida. A lot of them do live in the area, especially if they're newer talent who first had to go to spend time in the Performance Center to then get called up to the TV like shows and everything. But a lot of the guys who have been around and the bigger talent and, even the up and coming talent who didn't move their whole life to Florida just to be with the WWE, they had to fly in and travel to get to these tapings every week during a pandemic.
Did you ask a question at the beginning that I lost?
Or... Yeah, I said, so, what was the feeling among the talent and how people sort of perceived, these guys going to these events every week during this pandemic at this point?
I think everyone had reservations on every side. I talked to people who certainly didn't want to go to work at all. Where it gets really weird is, how do I put this? I guess the way the comparisons have been invited between AEW and WWE, where there are probably some areas where AEW has been better, I think, but it's a matter of degrees and no one should be running anyway. I think the big one is that it seems like there's trust among the AEW talent that they're genuinely not going to be punished in any way if they choose to stay home, where it seems like the WWE talent is less skeptical that Vince McMahon and company would live up to their version of the same promise.
All right.
So
who
think first, go ahead.
For some examples, who hasn't been on TV on both those companies? Like, who hasn't been on TV with the WWE for the past few weeks? Who hasn't been on AEW for the past few weeks? Like, who do we know has said, I'm not doing this?
Okay, with WWE, and this really gets to the heart of a lot of the, I guess, the skepticism over them not getting all political and weird with people about choosing not to work, is Roman Reigns has been gone, and he was going to be in basically the main event of WrestleMania against Bill Goldberg, and he was actually planning on working and got to the tapings, and apparently because the Miz showed up with apparently just a cold or something, but showing enough symptoms that he was like, yeah, that's it, I'm out. Where it gets dicey specific to Reigns is that Reigns is only in remission from his latest battle leukemia for about a year.
Right. I remember him. I did not know that part of the story. I didn't realize. I remember hearing he didn't want to do it because he was worried about being vulnerable because of his battle with leukemia. But I did not know he actually got to the tapings and then decided he's out. I did not know that.
Yep. And the thing there is, look, that decision never should have been his. It should never have gotten to the point where he would say, I'm out. Someone in his position just shouldn't be working for doing any work for WWE, and quite frankly, should be pretty much protected at home during this pandemic. Because he is immunocompromised much more than the average person.
Right. And if you think about it, what they were going to do with him, it's not like, Roman, we've been building this up for this doesn't make it any of it right, but I'm just putting this out here. It'd be somewhat more understandable, I guess, if it was like, hey, Roman, we're going to make sure you're taken care of. Make sure all the safety precautions that we can take are taken. We just need you to come for this one show because we've been promoting it. You're in the main event. You do this, and then you're home safe. Don't worry about coming in for the next couple of weeks. But from my understanding, they were going to put the title on him and build a whole program around him, which means they would have wanted him to come in every single week for the shows.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So, well, it's whatever you want to say about WWE. To me, the fact that they left that up to him is one of the bigger red flags and everything that's gone on. Like, even if you're cool with a promotion doing shows or doing repeated live shows where they keep flying people in, that shouldn't have happened. And for that to have happened makes it that you just can't trust their judgment on any of this at all. So as far as others, and we should know too, like, it does seem like they're pissed at Reigns, or Vince at least. When they officially were announcing that he was out of WrestleMania, they waited until SmackDown the night before the first half of WrestleMania was going to air. They had teased Triple H doing a media interview saying they had some creative way to get him to switch the match. If that happened, they taped something they decided not to air because they just announced that Braun Strowman was in the match instead without even using Roman Reigns' name.
Do we have any idea what happened there? Why that announcement was made and why it was whatever build-up was nixed?
What was taped?
Yeah.
No. I mean, they've done a very good job about keeping word about what was happening in each taping from leaking. So I haven't asked just because it's not something I feel like bothering people with.
Right.
But I mean, the assumption kind of has been, because of the way Triple H hyped it, was that they taped something and then nixed it. If he hadn't said that, it would be like, oh, this is just their petty way of reacting to how Reigns handled this.
Right.
But they must have shot something.
Right.
With whether it was with Reigns or not, who knows? But they must have shot something. So then, they just haven't mentioned his name. Like I said, the way they just kind of shunted him off was weird. He hasn't been like in certain video packages anymore, like the Make-A-Wish Foundation stuff, which he's normally the face of. So there's something going on. As far as people who otherwise just have vanished, Kyle O'Reilly on NXT, who is a diabetic, I believe, has just been home the whole time and is not working for the foreseeable future. If there's anyone that's like, actually, I am staying home. Daniel Bryan, even though he does have autoimmune issues, has been working. His wife has, even with her own connections with WWE, not publicly not been very happy about all that. And I feel like I'm forgetting someone. And then but those are the big ones where it's like, I am staying home because of potential health issues. And then there are other people, whether it's just so they don't have to fly as many or whatever, that just haven't been around as much, and that's a big release.
Right.
But on AEW, like, they've had a bunch of notable absences, especially from the Georgia shows, because they pretty much just stuck to people who could drive in, with a few exceptions. So it was mostly Georgia and Florida-based wrestlers, which, I mean, there were plenty of on the roster. But, Hangman Adam Page, one half of the tag team champions, has been absent for weeks. MJF, who lives in Long Island, has been absent for weeks. Really many of the top people, the Young Bucks in California, Ray Phoenix, who lives in California. It's a lot of people. I mean, I think Dave Meltzer said, like, the amount of the roster that's been at the shows in the Georgia tapings was like 29%. Wow. Of the amount of people that would normally be spread across all the shows.
Right. And so why do these companies, why does WWE and AEW feel like they need to do this when everyone else is pretty much understood they understood, the companies understood that they needed to not do this for health reasons, and the fans of, entertainment shows and sporting events various sporting leagues or whatever, those fans have understood, I get why this is not on TV. Why do these wrestling companies feel like they need to do this?
I mean, I'd say TV money, but that doesn't really change anything compared to, say, the NFL.
Right.
Is there a degree of where wrestling will be able to get away with it? Probably. AEW being a younger company, even with billionaire backing, probably sees the situation for them as more precarious.
Right.
Especially since they don't necessarily have the library content to be able to put more shows together that a WWE would.
Right.
Where WWE can just put here stuff that's never been on TV before from pay-per-views or whatever, or, God knows what.
Now, how much do
No, go ahead. They just have this, I was just going to say, they have, even if you count non-HD, maybe not all of it's digitized, but, they have, this 100,000 hour library or whatever.
Right. Now, this is what I think, and I think you'll agree with me, too. I think the reason why they're going and no one else is going is because their talent isn't unionized. That's
absolutely part of it. Yes.
There is no players union. There is no Screen Actors Guild that's going to let their members do anything during all this, and all those organizations know that they cannot do anything about it. So they'll save face and just say, "Oh, the shooting on this movie is shut down for now. We're postponing the season for now. Season's canceled." Wrestling doesn't have to worry about that because all that talent, independent contractors, without a union, no protections.
Yes.
Now we're gonna get to the big Trump connection very soon.
And by the way, you really should have David Starr on soon.
David Starr was on, buddy. You missed it.
That's right. I did listen. Well, have him back on in this context. I mean.
I spoke with him for like 2 hours and we hit everything. Oh, he's definitely coming back on. I definitely want him back on. But we definitely
That's what I mean, because there's a lot of new stuff, is what I mean.
Right, definitely.
I listened to the show.
Yeah. It's all right. It's all good.
We were just talking about how our brains have been rotting lately. So.
Right, that's true. No, I completely get it. So, yeah. What was I gonna? Now I'm completely lost my train of thought.
We're talking about unionization and why that's probably one of the reasons they don't have to worry about any kind of real pushback internally.
I got it now. So so we're not. I don't really quite want to spend too much time on this, but I think it's a good time to jump on this because it's definitely part of the story.
Yes.
So the XFL has shut down during all this.
Yes.
Vince McMahon's football baby. His XFL, which he brought back, utter failure in 2001, I believe it was, when he first tried to bring it. But this time around, all I was hearing was good reviews. All I was hearing were people saying, "This is it. He's got something on his hands here. This is gonna work this time." And then the pandemic happens, and next thing you know, everyone loses their job, and he's filing for the XFL's filing for bankruptcy.
Yes.
What happened there? Why couldn't he just postpone everything? Why couldn't he put everything on hold?
I don't know if they've given like an official answer. The probable real answer is that with the pandemic and everything, he doesn't think that there's any point in continuing because he won't be able to get any kind of well-paying TV deal. Because the XFL, as it stands right now, is a gamble. Their TV deals, while they had good TV deals in terms of the networks they were with, they were not getting a rights fee. They were just getting production paid for, which is not nothing, but still big loss. And they were locked into that for 3 years. This wasn't AEW who was getting production and a percentage of advertising. And granted, I think it was for longer term, but also got renegotiated.
Right. But how does this affect the idea? Well, why couldn't everyone's furloughed, which means everyone could get unemployment? Everything's put on hold. not losing any money, from my understanding. If you do that, he's not like XFL is a store that needs to pay rent or something. He's got the 3-year TV deal locked in, so he knows when they come back next year, they're on TV. I don't understand it. It feels like all those people lost their job, which they held for a total of how many months? And right during a pandemic. And, you got a bunch of people who are screwed, because if you're not familiar with people, the XFL football players were not getting paid an NFL salary. They're getting paid pretty much like, if they were going to head into the office as like a mid-level, like they weren't getting much money.
They're getting paid like Geo Media Union entry, like salary, like $50,000 a year.
Right. They weren't like rolling in the dough. And of course they're not getting all that money now, because we just found out they were making that money for how much? How long? 3 months? 4 months? 5 months maybe?
I mean, the company was going on longer, so at least on the office side, people were longer. But yeah, the players just this season that was cut off in the middle.
Right. It just seemed bizarre to me. Like there was something more going on there. I know the commissioner of the XFL is suing Vince McMahon now because
yeah. So what happened there was basically to not have to pay him his expensive contract in the bankruptcy. Vince fired him for cause. We don't know exactly what he said the cause was, especially since it turns out that their losses were lower than projected. So not sure what that was, but so he didn't have to have that in the bankruptcy, the expensive contract for Oliver Luck, and now Oliver Luck suing Vince personally. Vince also loaned the XFL money late, or loaned Alpha Entertainment, even though he's pretty much the owner. So he's also a priority creditor in the bankruptcy, which, no, I don't know if that's something you're normally allowed to do or not. It just seems like he was waving the white flag and wanted to do it in a way where he didn't care if he screwed people and wanted as little financial exposure as humanly possible.
Got it. It seems like things aren't going good for Vince McMahon, and I feel like he's taking it out on everyone around him. So I heard that was the word, right?
Yeah, and then this takes us, though, I guess, to about 3 weeks.
When I say
right?
Things aren't going good for Vince McMahon, the guy's got a lot of money. When I mean not going good for Vince McMahon, I mean the guy's taking a hit to his ego, really.
Yes, because this was his big thing, his one last try to show that he can be more than a wrestling promoter, and he just had to bail out quick for not, it seemed like, though, he was going in with like, well, at least I can use the excuse this time of the pandemic, whatever. But because of the degree to which he's screwing people, and a lot, these are all people he could have paid, especially because he didn't put close to the money he was planning on long term in there, and maybe, really had put in less than people thought he had.
Right.
So like all these vendors and, he publicly owned stadiums. So, I think the city of St. Louis is one of the creditors, for example. Like he's screwing some people that he really shouldn't be. Right.
Wow.
So that was what day was that? That was in between. Was that the day before? When was that? The day before the WWE layoff started?
I think it was. But before we get to the layoffs, I wanted to.
Right. Everything starts snowballing a few days earlier.
I wanted to really follow this story on the timeline, and so far we've been doing it because here we go. So, yes. Florida finally catches up with the rest of, I would say, the most populous states in the country that are dealing with this. The ones that really, New York was hit really hard right up front, right up top, but then. These other states, like Michigan and Florida, they're starting to get really hit too. And they're all starting to catch up with, hey, we have to do these lockdowns and quarantines, things getting serious.
So, right. Florida put in their order on April 1st, I believe.
Right.
Which is why WWE needed to get all of their taping in by the end of March.
Which is weeks after New York decided to tell people to stay home. So Florida does that. They get their TV tapings in for WrestleMania. Then from what I heard was... they had a bunch of tapings already set up. And that was that. They were going to just take it from there or whatever. But then all of a sudden, I hear WWE is starting to shoot live, and local authorities are giving them trouble because they're literally breaking the order.
Yes. So, okay. Where's the best place to start with this? So, what they had taped was through the NXT the Wednesday after WrestleMania. So they had through the WrestleMania that aired on the Saturday and Sunday, the Raw the next night on Monday, and then NXT 2 days after that. And they had blocks set up where they would tape several weeks over the next weekend. And there, at some point, they had taped the SmackDown for that week. They had started that block. And then there starts being buzz on the Thursday, and it becomes official on the Friday being the 10th of April, that Vince is saying, no, we're going to go back to doing everything live. And no one has any idea what's going on. Everyone's convinced at first, oh God, he either got word that they're not going to get the full TV rights if he's not live for every show, or he's paranoid that could happen, something like that.
I mean, it seems like a pretty simple thing you do as the CEO of a major public company like that. You literally get on the phone with the heads of these TV channels, and you say, "Hey, under these conditions, let's work out something, or let's get it straight. I'm giving you guys content. Let's tape it." Like, it seems like something you could find out. You don't have to just throw it out, like throw your hands in the air and say, "I guess we got to go live."
Right, and I don't know how much live is really going to add, because everyone's done a good job of keeping everything under wraps anyway.
Right, because there's no live audience. Right.
Yes, exactly. So, meanwhile, everyone's wondering how this could happen anyway. There was confusion on how really they would be doing the shows on, that they had planned in the first place, even though the general feeling was like, I don't like anyone running shows, but if you're going to do it, do these big batches. People can quarantine before and after if they really need to. They're not flying back and forth. They're not being, in compressed tubes with recirculated air for hours, flying over and back home. If you're going to do it, this is the way to do it. And all of a sudden they're abandoning that, but no one's even sure how they were able to do it the other way in the first place. We do know that they had sent all the talent a letter to show that if they were pulled over by law enforcement or whatever, this is before anything came down in Florida saying that this was the case for them. I believe it was actually, from what I heard, and this is don't hold me to this, but it makes perfect sense because of the timing, because I believe I don't have multiple sources on it. I believe it was April 1st was when they got an email saying, like, show this to cops. We're considering ourselves an essential media production. That they were trying to get in under the media exemption, as if, that's really for news media, but is written with enough flex that companies try to get around it.
Right.
And it makes sense that it'd be the first, because that was the first day that, that anyone going to work there would be in violation of anything. So then this comes down on the 10th, and then on, I think it was so that's Friday the 10th, 11th, 12th, and then I think it was the 12th or the 13th, the Orange County mayor gets questions, and, it was the Monday. It was Monday afternoon. Orange County is where Orlando and Winter Park, Florida are. And he says that something about how the governor had said they're essential media, and rambles and gives this really weird, terrible, but also kind of planted sounding, even if it's sloppy, answer. And later that night, Mark Raimondi at ESPN, having reached out to the governor, they send him this executive. I mean, it's not an executive order. It was from the Office of Emergency Management, but the governor's office was the one who was sending it out. It was on their website, and It included sports events that were broadcast nationally, but had no audience as being allowed as essential services. There were other changes too. It wasn't just that.
Right.
But this had come down on the Thursday, and no one knew about it until the Monday.
Right.
No one within WWE knew about it. No one within AEW knew about it. No one within the major sports leagues, as far as I know, knew about it. I later found out there was some rumblings within Florida media about it existing, but nothing specific. So then people also put it together with how also on the Thursday, America First PAC, which is the official Trump reelection super PAC run by Linda McMahon, Vince's wife, the former CEO of WWE, former Trump cabinet member, etc., was allocating, was it 18.5 or 19.5 million?
I think it was 18.
I think it was 18.5.
Yeah.
18.5 million of its advertising resources for the election to Florida. And I want to stress, that is what happened. A lot of people have misunderstood what it was. No one gave money to Ron DeSantis or any potential re-election campaign of his. No one gave money to the Florida Republican Party. If you want to believe there was a quid pro quo here, I'm not saying there is. It looks bad. The timing obviously looks bad. But if you're going with that, understand that what you're going with is the idea that, I guess, with it be how it would affect down ballot races and stuff, they allocated extra money towards Florida, knowing that it would help Linda's husband's company, which is also kind of hers, but not exactly.
Right. And there's a whole nother thing there.
Right. I could believe it either way on that one. I mean, it's Florida. It's a swing state. Obviously they're going to devote a lot of money there anyway, and it is the official re-election path. But still not a great look as far as the timing, especially the fact that no one knew about this order for days for some reason. So that happens, and everyone's like, okay, well, clearly they're doing live, but the TV rights money's safe, so looks like everyone's okay for now. And then they start doing layoffs on the Wednesday.
Right. So let's just. I agree with you, because that's when it started blowing up. This really started getting out of hand when, first of all, that DeSantis order comes down. People start to realize that essential services are including these live sporting events. And I mean, really, if you think about it, perhaps the idea was to convince other sporting event companies to come down to Florida, because DeSantis has handled this whole thing horribly. He closed the beaches at the last minute. I think they were closed for, I don't know, a week or two before he reopened a bunch of them. He has not been taking this seriously. I mean, it's where spring break was in full swing when all this was going on, and you saw those clips of people of young people throwing parties and events, and they're just chilling on the beach, and DeSantis didn't do anything about it. So you have this incompetent Republican governor down in Florida, and I think the order probably comes down without WWE specifically in mind, but in his mind, hey, let's use this opportunity to get some business for Florida. Come on down to Florida, hold your events here where you still can. But the only company doing that at the time at all, on a national level at least, is the WWE. So it seems like this is specifically made for the WWE, which...
Yes. Well, we should note, though, the plan Major League Baseball had and may still have to maybe do an abbreviated season at spring training facilities in Florida and Arizona. That, I think, first came out on the Friday, the day after the order would have gone through, but before people knew it had. So, there was other stuff in play, and, also, UFC had already had some kind of talks to go put stuff in Florida. and already knew that the Athletic Commission in Florida was game to regulate as long as shows are otherwise governmentally kosher in the more general sense with the pandemic. And I mean, that is what's happening now too. But this was still WWE who was benefiting from it most immediately because they were already doing stuff. Yes.
All right. And then you have this, and then the media picks up on Linda McMahon's big contribution to that Trump super PAC.
Well, it's not a Linda McMahon contribution. This was her directing the super PAC money from the super PAC that she runs.
Got it. Okay.
She has donated. I could pull it up. She's donated a surprise. I don't know. It's not like I've looked into super PAC money on a PAC to PAC basis that much. She's donated what feels like a lot for a PAC that is employing her.
Right.
Right. It's not her PAC. She is not building it herself. It existed already. This is the PAC that was involved with the Giuliani stuff.
Right. I forgot about that. Right.
Before she was hired.
Right.
So it's not like it was new. It's not like she was seeding it herself.
Right.
And then she has put, I want to say, a few million, and she may actually, no, she's not the top. I think she's the number 2 donor. I forget who number 1 is. Dana White, president of the UFC, is up there too because he put in $1 million. But she has put money in, but the money that was being earmarked for Florida, I mean, that's media buys though, and that's from the PAC.
Right. So I think you pretty much got it right to begin with. I think this is more of a thing where, thank you, we're supporting Republican candidates down ballot in Florida. That seems way more likely than I think a lot of people thought. Oh, Trump called in a favor, which, I mean, would he have to do that for DeSantis? No, DeSantis would help out Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon gave him a call. He doesn't need to go through Trump.
Right, and Florida these days, I mean, that's arguably the state where WWE is most politically connected now.
Right.
They built up so much with Orlando. Yeah, I mean, John Sabor, who runs, I don't remember his actual title, but he handles WrestleMania bidding and all that stuff. He was someone they hired away from Orlando after Orlando gave them one of the very first big pitches. And I think they were so wowed by him that they brought him on to be their guy for that. For being the guy who sorted through the different bids and pitches from the different host cities for WrestleMania and then, potentially for other events as well. And, they have the big presence in the Orlando area too with the Performance Center, with their involvement with Full Sail University, which is, it's a for-profit university, but still they're firmly entrenched there. WrestleMania was going to be in Tampa this year. One would think, assuming the world doesn't completely end, it'll be in Tampa in 2 years. With Los Angeles already having next year. Tampa is realistically not a huge tourist market, especially for WrestleMania. So, again, that just shows how tight they are with, Florida. So, if there was going to be somewhere, it was always going to be Florida anyway, I guess, that would kind of bend to their will if you were going to look at it that way.
I mean, honestly, it feels like, I know this isn't completely accurate, but it feels like every other WrestleMania is in Florida nowadays. I feel like Florida WrestleMania, we'll go to Los Angeles. Florida WrestleMania, hey, New York. Florida WrestleMania, what's up? I don't know. What's another big area they've had a WrestleMania?
New Orleans.
New Orleans. Yeah, that's
New Orleans is the one they did really close together because they did New Orleans in 2014 and 2018.
Right. New Orleans, not to go off track here, but New Orleans honestly feels like the perfect WrestleMania city. But we'll continue. We'll not focus on that in this show.
New Orleans is so good for WrestleMania.
Yeah, but let's continue. So the Trump connection seems just to be the overall Republican connection. It's not Trump implicitly who helped out Vince. It's just that Vince McMahon.
Well, it could.
So you think it could be?
Could. I think it could. I'm not saying it is. I mean, he put Vince and along with Dana White on whatever that committee to restart the economy is.
Right.
He's been tweeting a lot more about Vince lately, all of a sudden, and about WWE.
That's a great point. Because I honestly felt there was something more. And then when you were telling me about the Super PAC and everything, you would convince me that maybe it wasn't that, there's something going on there, but it doesn't go all the way up to Trump directly. Obviously, it's always implicit. He's the head of the Republican Party and good friends with Vince McMahon. But yeah, that's a great point. I will say I felt seen finally as a pro wrestling fan to have the CEO of the major pro wrestling company sitting on a call with the other major sports leagues. But besides from that,
yeah.
So you think there could be something there then?
I mean, I think there could be something. And again, like, he tweeted about Triple H last week. What was the thing he had tweeted about? Or no, was it there was a Vince tweet, or was it that there may have been another tweet about Vince recently, and then also there was the thing where he was talking about the great Vince McMahon at one of the coronavirus briefings.
Right, I remember that. And then he did wish Triple H out of nowhere, just wished him a happy anniversary for his 25th anniversary, his 25 years of being Triple H, being in the biz.
We should note, like, part of that is probably also just that Vince is one of the few people that Trump actually follows on Facebook.
There you go.
I mean, on Twitter, excuse me.
Right.
I don't know why I said Facebook. So it's like, if he's looking at Twitter, he's going to be more likely to see that. But and Vince doesn't tweet that much, but obviously that's something he was tweeting about.
Right. Well,
so
I'll say that the day Trump tweeted that out about Triple H, that's the day he finally became president. For me, at least, that's the day he became my president. Ever since that day, I started flying my Trump flag, walking around going, "My president, Donald Trump." That's the day for me. So let's get to this. This is where it all starts to get. So we've already gone to the insanity of pro wrestling continuing during the coronavirus pandemic, which leads us to all the issues with these wrestlers going to these shows, which leads us to the DeSantis, Trump, Vince McMahon, Linda McMahon, Trump Super PAC possible connections in getting these orders calling pro wrestling essentially. But now this is where it gets to be, honestly, if you thought all that was ridiculous, this is where it gets to be ridiculous. So the essential business, WWE, comes out, was it a day later, 2 days later after this whole thing? Just a few days later at the most. The same week, for sure.
It was the Wednesday after it was the order being a thing that had come out on Thursday, or that it was executed on Thursday, comes out on the following Monday, and then 2 days later on Wednesday is when all of a sudden there's this call and a bunch of people get laid off.
Right. So the essential business, WWE, lays off essential workers who obviously were essential. They were needed at the time, but I guess apparently not. Break it down for us, David.
Okay. And I'm going to pull up Brandon Thurston's article on WrestleNomics.com, which I will plug because he has by far the best analysis about this side of it.
Right, he's on my short list to have him on eventually.
Yes. Also a really good independent wrestler too, by the way.
Oh.
Okay, let's see. So this one would be, okay, yes, WWE layoffs were morally heartless and economically unnecessary. So one of the things that's just like, spoiler, before I get to kind of the heart of what's in here, it looks like the goal was to do this to cover the dividend while still meeting the original profit projections, more or less, for the quarter.
So to break it down for the layperson, you're saying that a bunch of people were laid off, not because WWE was in dire straits and needed to do this so they could keep running as a company. They did this just so the amount of money they said to their shareholders they would make, they still would make that money.
Yes, and then be able to give out the dividend, which primarily affects Vince McMahon anyway, although I did ask Brandon to do the math of if they only cut the dividend for the McMahon family members in their class of stock, how much that would have been. It wouldn't have taken care of everything, but it would have taken care of a fairly solid chunk of it. All right, so where is his... I'm looking. I know he did the actual numbers here. And the short version is this. The bulk of the actual savings that they're actually achieving from all the moves they made is from not shutting down the current headquarters and selling it and building the new building nearby. That's the bulk of it, and then they're saving.
Oh wait, they're saving they're not moving out of Titan Towers anymore?
Yeah, that's been deferred. God knows how long. But that's where the bulk of their actual savings coming from, and then it's like 50 million across the whole year, give or take, that they're saving from the. No wait, from, or was that the total? Now I'm sure. I thought the article I was pulling up here had the numbers right in front, but it's not. The point is, they easily could have afforded this. They could keep all of the people they let go under contract at the same pay, and they'd still be massively profitable, if not right behind their all-time record profits.
Jeez. So
yes.
So how many people did they lay off that we know of? Obviously, because we only were told, I guess, the on-screen talents who were laid off, and I believe word got out about some of the producers who were usually former wrestling talent who then work backstage to help plan out the matches with the on-screen talent. This doesn't include the number of people who work in the offices who we know were laid off, but I guess we don't know how many there are of that, do we?
Yes. The only ones that were announced by WWE were wrestlers who were basically in some kind of television role or had been, because there were people that were signed to, developmental deals for NXT that weren't actually announced. Actually, no, I should rephrase that, because they didn't announce all of those. So it's hard to say what the right rule of thumb is, but basically TV wrestlers would be your people that they actually announced, and that was a few dozen, but also a bunch of people from NXT, then the wrestling producers, road agents, whatever you want to call them, got furloughed, a lot of them. A lot of it was just older ones. The longest tenured referee, Mike Chioda, got laid off. Kerwin Silfies, who's a director who had been gone at one point but has been there for years and years and years, got let go. And again, there's probably tons of people we don't know about at all. But based on their actual math, let me find the actual press release, because they didn't give the actual numbers, but the way they phrased it was pretty still explained pretty clearly. I'm on the corporate website, and it's not as easy to navigate as it should be. Anyway, because this would be easier if I wasn't holding the phone in the one hand and also trying to hit her. But I mean, it's dozens and dozens of people. We don't know exactly how many, just because we there are so many people whose names we don't know that wouldn't be announced, that even if maybe they posted on their own social media, we wouldn't know to look for them. That it's hard to know. But it's not some big savings. Oh, here we go. Investor news section. That's what it is. The press releases. But this isn't some gigantic amount for a company that's making, in TV rights fees alone, at least $500 million a year.
All right. Jeez, So what are these guys who are laid off during a pandemic? What do they do? What's for them? Do they get some sort of, or do they immediately get cut off? Is there some sort of amount of time where they're still making their money? Like, because I want people to understand. If you go back and listen to at the very beginning of the pandemic in mid-March, I had David Starr on. He's an independent wrestler, and he was telling me how basically, listen to the show, please. It was a great episode, but he was telling me basically how he's got no income right now because as an independent wrestler, you make your money pretty much off of doing live events. Yes, you have merch, and he probably does to get some merch sales, but if you're not performing at the events, you're not getting your name out there. and you're not getting paid the bulk of your money. And it's not like WWE where you have some sort of, while you're working for them, you have some sort of guarantee. You get paid no matter what they do with you, whether you're sitting home or whether you're on the road and performing at TV shows. Indie wrestlers, they get paid per appearance on these events. So these guys who are now laid off from the WWE, do they have any income? Do WWE still pay them for a certain amount of time? They're not going to get any new work right now.
It looks like it's 90 days for the people. This isn't entirely sure, but it's like probably 90 days for the people who were on TV, and then 30 days for the people who were just kind of kicking around the Performance Center. And again, they don't really have anywhere else to go because there's no regular jobs and there's no wrestling jobs.
Could these guys file for the unemployment benefits?
I mean, yeah, anyone can. I mean, that's one good thing is that they put in all the allowances for independent contractors and stuff.
Right.
It wouldn't necessarily be the same money in some of these roles, but in some cases, I mean, it's not bad.
Right.
Again, applying for it can be a motherfucker right now, but
right.
It's, especially in Florida, because so many of these people are living in Florida, because Florida's had so many issues with their unemployment site.
Right.
So that does complicate it.
Right.
Real quick, so I don't forget, this is what was in the press release about their COVID-19 business stuff. The company's reductions of employee compensation and headcount result in an estimated monthly savings of $4 million. Okay, so I was right about. It was about $50 million for the year. Along with cash flow, I dropped my phone. Cash flow improvement of $140 million, primarily from the deferral in spending on the company's new headquarters. And also it noted that they have substantial financial resources, both available cash and debt capacity, in which currently total approximately $500 million to manage the challenges ahead. So they also have $500 million of cash and credit that they haven't touched.
Right.
And so across the quarter it's 12. Across a quarter it's 12 million. Across the whole year it's about 48.
Now
that's it. And this is not just wrestlers. This is so that's everyone.
Now, am I right that something happened where WWE was actually doing PSA, public service announcements? I forgot what the organization was, telling people to stay home.
Yeah, they did an ad council PSA about social distancing and hand washing and all that good stuff. Yes.
I remember seeing that they stopped doing they stopped doing the commercials or something like that. It came back to bite them in the ass somehow, right?
That.
Maybe I missed
anything.
Maybe
like that
maybe I'm telling you, dude. There's so much news all the time now that sometimes when I'm recalling something, I've found myself like combining two separate stories. So I could be literally talking about something that's not wrestling related at all right now that I thought was. There's so much news right now. Do you feel the same way as someone who covers like just always paying attention to the news cycle? Like I've been I've been a part of crazy news cycles where I've been just constantly being bombarded with story after story after story of all different that spans all different industries and happenings, local news, national news, political, business, whatever. I feel like there's never been a time where I've been so bombarded like I am right now. It is insane.
Oh, there was a point several weeks back where I think I was talking to my mom on the phone, and I was just kind of lamenting how I think when I had moved, I think maybe I misplaced some of my 1099s, and I didn't want to have to reach out to the different, accounting people at the different freelance clients and to get the taxes together. And then it turned out I had missed the whole thing about tax day being delayed 3 months.
Right. I mean, right. And it was pretty big. It was a pretty big thing. But yeah.
It's a big thing to miss, but it also was not like even the main coronavirus story that day or anything like it.
Right.
Right.
So David,
so where were we actually before I interrupted myself with the?
No, you just laid out the reserves they had.
Right. No, but before that, where were we? We were talking about independent wrestlers.
Yeah, and how they what they're up to. So David, is there anything else?
And also, don't forget that the ones who are working were gonna WrestleMania weekend also missed out on their big money weekend of the year, where they get all the extra bookings and sell more merchandise.
Right. It's so, the craziest thing from a wrestling perspective for me about all this is that literally if we just moved everything up by 3 weeks, WrestleMania would have happened. That's what's so insane about this, because if you watch I think it was the last weekend in February, WWE is holding a pay-per-view in a sold-out arena. The Elimination Chamber. It's so stunning to me to see that just literally like a week or two before these lockdowns started coming down, you look at the WWE's pay-per-view right before WrestleMania, and it's a packed crowd in a arena, and you have like, what was it, like 8-9 wrestlers in a cage fighting each other at the same time. It's crazy.
And then 2 weeks later, that was a very long 2 weeks.
Right. Just insanity. Now, David, what's it? Ugh, I'm repeating myself 100 times as I stutter here. What does it look like for professional wrestling going forward right now? Is this just the new normal for the time being? They've come to, I've said this before, Drew McIntyre, who had his big WrestleMania moment, finally winning his world title in front of nobody. But what is the outlook now? It's just they're gonna just keep doing these empty arena shows until, from the looks of it, I don't know when they're going to stop doing these type of shows. I don't know when live events are going to be the absolute last thing to come back.
Yeah, and Vince is talking like they may need to reevaluate how much they do at all, because live events had been losing money for, it was something like 6 of the last 7 quarters.
So they're planning on maybe doing empty arena shows for the TV shows for good, is what you're saying.
I don't know if I'd say empty arena, but they're definitely rethinking things and doing more of these cinematic matches. Like,
see,
they're rethinking. They seem to be using this as a way to maybe redo how the whole business is going forward. The live event thing isn't surprising. The way I kind of looked at it for the last, however long now that they were really getting to the point of losing money is, I felt like it would take something big for WWE to cancel them, because the charitable arm of WWE, this isn't to slight the work they're doing, but a big reason that WWE is such a strong partner of like Make-A-Wish is, who else are the big celebrities that are going to be going into like the smaller markets that WWE has live events in?
Right.
You're not going to get as big a star as, at one point Cena or even a Reigns or whoever going into just to, throw a name out there, Quad Cities, Laredo, Texas, whatever.
Right. Honestly,
and that's a big deal, and that's a big part of what WWE does these days. So, like, there was part of me that could see them like being like, okay, we lose a few $1 million a year, but this is such a part of what we do as a company to have these tours, and otherwise we wouldn't be going into these places. But now the pandemic is, I guess, the thing that could shake that up.
I'm sorry, but wrestling without a crowd. I'm happy there's no crowd right now, but if this is the long-term scenario, wrestling without a crowd,
I don't think it is.
Like, if you want to do more of these like empty arena matches, empty arena shows, I think it works for sometimes, or even have a regular, if you want to cut down the cost of wrestlers' travel and do this for like one show a week or something. But the idea that you wouldn't have a live wrestling crowd is for good is stunning to me.
I think it's more doing more of the cinematic matches, doing less house shows, and maybe doing some degree of less arena size.
No, I don't think. I think they've been working their wrestlers too hard. These house shows seem to be pointless at this point in time. To be honest, the idea that you would have these non-televised events that just live in that moment. Then you would have these guys go out, put their body on the line. Every slam they take is a potential for something to go wrong.
Every bump a wrestler takes is the equivalent of like a 30-mile-an-hour car.
There you go. Yeah. The house shows I could see cutting back on. Maybe you don't do those anymore. But if you're gonna do a televised event, you should have it in front of a crowd. That way, these guys get their,
Yeah.
I'm sure they like it better too. I mean, this can't be
Yeah.
too fun for them to just do it in front of nobody.
Oh, I couldn't believe they went ahead with the ladder match at WrestleMania for that reason, because it's like, I can't imagine a wrestler doing that type of match without the adrenaline of the crowd.
Right. It's got to be difficult, right?
Like, that had to suck for those guys.
It's
like there were some tricks. They did put a crash pad out carefully placed for one big bump to the floor, but like otherwise they were still going out there falling on ladders and stuff. Go ahead.
It's like assuming that that there will never be a live concert again, and all bands will just play in front of a camera, live stream to your home. It's like,
I don't see that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe venues will be different. Maybe how we act at them or how they present themselves. There'll be probably safety precautions. I'm sure there'll be a lot of, sanitizer and all that sort of stuff. But the idea that they just would no longer be a live communal experience seems like it would be crazy to me. But who knows? I mean, who knows anymore what's going to happen? I mean, I got no idea at this point. I don't even. I am exhausted. This has been quite the few months, Yeah,
and I moved right before all this, after I had my whole moving ordeal with the losing the apartments and then finally getting a place on short notice and getting moved and settled in. And it's like, nothing against my new roommates, but it's weird to be going through this with new roommates.
Oh, right, because you don't know them yet. Right.
Yeah.
It's one thing I do hope that happens, but it's not going to. Is that I hope there's a lot of good changes from this. I mean, there should definitely be a look at how the modern workplace is. I mean, we're now seeing that a lot of people don't have to travel. I mean, obviously, if I was in a band, like I mentioned, or a wrestler, anyone who worked in a live entertainment industry, you want to continue to travel. That's the job. But if you are someone who works in an office, literally, why are you polluting the environment, doing all this other stuff when you could literally just be working from home? That seems like a major change that could happen with a lot of these companies that have software developers come in just to go from the computer at their house to the computer in the office. I mean, it sort of makes no sense. Obviously a lot of governmental policies, social safety nets, healthcare, all these things that I'm mentioning right now, should be changed, which probably will not be changed at all, I guess, now that I'm, as I'm saying it.
Yeah. I mean, some of this is depending on how long some of this is going to go, and then especially if, who knows what happens if Florida and Georgia fuck everyone else up, in the next several weeks.
Right. We don't know what's going to happen with all Florida and Georgia rolling this stuff back, rolling their orders back. I mean, we already see Georgia has had their biggest number of positive cases since period after these business closure orders were rolled back.
Right, and I don't know how it is out for you in Queens, but I feel like one of my roommates, he does actually have to still go out for work every day because he works at a animal hospital. He tells me things have been getting worse again as far as the trains getting, I don't know if crowded would be the word, but more crowded. Right. But when I've had to go out, I feel like people have mostly been doing what they should be doing.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, when I go out to get food or some basic necessities, most people who are out are also doing the same thing, or B, work at those places, and everyone who's out is wearing a mask now. Well, where I am in Queens, I don't know if this is by you. I know Governor Cuomo has said he wants everyone wearing a mask, but for me, I live in Queens, Flushing.
Yes.
And every place here requires a mask. You cannot go into the establishment if you're not wearing a mask now.
Everywhere I've been lately has been requiring masks.
Yeah,
yes.
There's a sign on the door that says no mask, no service. Don't come in without a mask. So yeah, I mean, I also wonder, we're also in a bubble here in New York. I really do wonder now when you see all this stuff happening outside of New York, all these protests and everything. I know those protests still are very small, but I do wonder how much life has changed for people in states other than New York. Maybe New Jersey is also quite close to how New York is because they're the second most. But I wonder how people are going about their lives in Georgia, how people are going about their lives in Missouri, in California, in Washington State. I mean, it's got to be completely different than how it is here.
It is, but like in some ways, like here we're all doing and going along with this, but we don't have our own cars for the most part. Like there are areas there ahead of us in which running a quick errand or something is easier for them, and in where, you know what I mean? This disrupts someone living in New York City more in many ways because of the reliance on public transit and the like.
Right. I mean, and the public transit situation here is what the things I'm hearing about the people who work for the MTA who've died from this is just horrible. The idea that there's implicit dangers of a job, and the idea that you would get sick and die from a virus while helping the trains run is just fucking gross. It's really sad. I mean, no one should be dying from this, but I mean, if you're a doctor who works with these sorts of things, the chances are you're going to get sick, even if it's not something as serious as this. An MTA worker is just, that's just depressing, to be quite honest. And they're the ones who are helping these essential workers get to where they got to go.
Yeah.
The same for any essential worker who is outside the medical field. I mean, medical field as well, but it's even less understandable to me if you're just, a server at a fast food restaurant or something like that, and you get sick and die because of your job. That's just horrendous, horrible. It's making me get upset thinking of the teachers who have passed on from this, the public school teachers. It's just, Christ, man, All right.
Yeah, and then hey, look, the countries where things have actually been getting better at a decent rate have been compensating the people who aren't able to work because of their jobs being non-essential and blah blah blah. Right? Like it's not rocket science.
Right. I had a whole rant earlier today about this in terms of you see all these protests happening. And again, very small numbers, and these people are usually conservative leaning or whatever. But some of their messages is that we need to end the lockdowns. The government has failed us. We need to end the lockdowns because we need to get back to work. Well, you're correct. The government has failed you. But it's not because of the lockdowns. The lockdowns are the correct move. You shouldn't be protesting. You shouldn't be worrying about your business or your job. You shouldn't be worrying about feeding your family. Because what should have happened is, like it's happened in every other country, is that you get locked down and the government either provides you with money close to, if not at your salary level, make sure your rent and everything is covered, make sure you have your basic necessities. I know some countries are even full out just providing food for everyone. And we're just not doing that. And that's where we failed. You wouldn't be worrying about your job and your business and your rent if we were doing what every other country was doing. And that's just the real sad part of it. And the essential workers would be literally people who absolutely need to work because people's lives depend on it, because someone needs to take care of the sick. That's simple.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
To end with, I'll throw this at you just as a bright spot, like in all of this. I mean, it's a pandemic specific thing, but I've been happy to see it. So out by you, do you have like a mask and hand sanitizer guy?
We have people in Flushing at major intersection hawking masks for a lot more than they're worth. That's the closest we've got to whatever you're about to tell me.
Because out by me, they're a table outside a pharmacy, but they have a license and everything, and they are not gouging, and they have good supplies of everything, and now they're there every day. but they're not, like, that's the thing. They are not gouging people.
Yeah,
Like,
that's not
some of the stuff, really, yeah. I mean, some of the stuff costs a little, some of the stuff costs a little more than it would have before. But,
right.
like, I got my cloth masks there. They were like 4 each or 3 for 11 or something. And they, hand sanitizer for just, some of it's a little more expensive than before, but not in any close to a ridiculous way. And they have the different types of masks and stuff. And it's like, especially when, like, not everyone's going to be making something out of a t-shirt or whatever. It's like, people need masks, especially now people might be out and not realize they need to get a mask to go into the store.
Right.
Like, it's nice to see someone who's actually able to get their hands on the stuff and doing it in a way that's, not ripping people off or anything. And it sucks that there are still plenty of people doing it that way.
Well, for me, the thing that amazes me and makes me a little bit, feel positively is that if you were to tell me that the people in this country would all agree to, for the most part, to stay inside because of a pandemic. And
I did not think it would go close to as well as it has. No.
Yes, it is insane to me, and in a good way. And it's it's honestly one of the very, very few times in my 34 years, close to 34 years living alive, where I've seen people in this country act in a way that shocked me in a positive way. It's stunning to me. Like, when I see those people protesting, it's like, literally, I get it. It's horrendous to see those people do it. It's angering. But when you look at those numbers and then you compare it to the amount of people who've been listening to this, I mean, I would have never guessed it, man.
Republicans are overwhelmingly in favor of all the social distancing and the stay-at-home stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like the people they're being astroturfed into doing these protests. Like, even in the Republicans, they're not close to mainstream. Like,
right.
The general public is in overwhelming agreement on this, which I honestly would not have expected.
I think I saw something close to 70% of people said this was the right thing to do and to continue doing it. It baffles me. It baffles me, and I've never been baffled in a good way by people in this country before. I'm speechless. It's stunning to me, and I guess if there's any hope that good can come out of things, this is one of those rare instances. I mean, I would have never thought in a million years. All right, David. I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about this WWE stuff with me. It was blowing up. I haven't seen WWE talked about in this way in the mainstream since, God, I don't even know. Since maybe Linda McMahon got thrown in Trump's cabinet in 2017. And even before that, with Benoit. I mean, it's not every day WWE is part of the mainstream news cycle in the way they were with the fact that they were considered an essential business.
Yeah, I don't know what the best comparison would be, but it was building up momentum as a story in a way that nothing really had in a while. Like, even the Saudi stuff around the WWE specific Saudi stuff after Khashoggi was assassinated, really, I guess,
forgot all about that.
It was a small part. I know. I guess because it was a small part of that bigger story. That didn't build up like this did.
I just got to clarify for a second. I didn't forget about Khashoggi. I forgot about the WWE going to Saudi Arabia right after that happened, and there being a whole...
Literally on the 1 month anniversary of him being killed and dismembered.
Right. And then we're forgetting that there was just a whole big... I'm forgetting, and I just reminded myself now, of that whole big hubbub that happened last time they were in Saudi Arabia, where rumor has it, wrestlers were held hostage and weren't allowed to leave the country because of a beef between Vince McMahon and MBS.
They actually did go back since then. It was in February, actually.
They went in February?
But it was, that was when Goldberg won the title.
Oh, shit, I forgot about that. And people went after all that? I forgot about that. See, that's crazy. Again,
yeah, it was a much more scaled down number of wrestlers. Like, most of the previous Saudi cards had like ridiculous numbers of wrestlers on the card.
I bet there's a lot of guys who didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
Literally
like a wrestler, literally like someone messaged me like, hey, you might want to check with people. I heard there might be something going on with the plane or something in Saudi Arabia. I messaged one of the wrestlers, and I'd have to pull up the exact wording, but it was something to the effect of, I think we might be held hostage.
Jeez. And this is a guy on the roster?
Yes.
Wow. You're going to have to tell me off the record when we're done with this who it was. Because I'm dying to know. Yeah, they went overseas in February, right before. I mean, not even right before all this. Overseas is where it all was already happening in February.
Yeah, and then we didn't even talk about how they had a COVID-19 positive.
Oh, they did, right. Who do we know who it was?
We don't know who it was. It was a non-wrestler performer.
So a manager or a referee? No, referee.
I think it was. Well, they said not on the roster, so probably an announcer.
Is there someone we haven't seen? It was
Ryan Staton who gave a little bit too many details.
Who was it? Drop it. I don't
remember getting a specific name, and I think anyone who was speculated has come back. But it was after, like, apparently they went out with, like, frontline healthcare workers after WrestleMania wrapped. Like,
which seems like
good judgment there. Yeah.
Seems like not a good idea to do.
No, it's really not a good idea.
I mean, I read stories every day about the doctor who's also a mother and had to bring her kids months ago to the grandparents' house or to another family member's house where they've been staying, and they haven't seen their kids other than behind a glass window since this, because they knew not to live in the same house with people who were also not working in a hospital every single day.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully they didn't expose anyone at work because of that, because it was after WrestleMania wrapped. But yeah, there was that whole thing, and then, that came out, and God, I feel like there's a bunch that happened that we might be forgetting then too, because the fact that we forgot about that.
There was so much that happened, and I've been doing I've been doing more shows than usual. I went from doing 4 shows a month to about 5 or 6 shows a month, which, it doesn't sound like that much anymore. But when you have these shows so close together, it feels forever to me. It feels like I'm doing a ton more. But yeah, I'm glad I've been doing them. But yeah, every time there's just so much going on, I had to up the amount of, I had to throw in an extra show or 2 a month.
Yeah. I feel like in a weird way, I kind of miss, even though in a way, it's kind of nice to not hear about as much of all this. I kind of miss that, you and, I'm not hearing about as much of the Hell World stuff from, you and Jared Holt and the like.
Right. But this is a whole different Hell World.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, we've fallen in a different dimension, and we've got a new Hell World.
Yeah. Beat, as opposed to the current Hell World.
Right.
But it's weird to have that out of my routine, that the coronavirus stuff has kind of supplanted a lot of that.
I did do a great episode a couple of weeks ago. When I say great, not patting myself on the back, I'm talking about my guest was really good.
Yes.
About how white supremacists are using the pandemic to push their agenda. So if you want some of that old school Hell World mixed with the new school Hell World, check out that episode of the show. There you go. All right, David, thank you for joining me tonight. Where could people find your latest?
Follow me on Twitter at David Bix. I should have at least one big article coming out next week. I cannot necessarily say what it is right now, because it is, I think, was sitting with a lawyer the last I heard.
Ooh.
And I should have a fairly big feature coming as well within the next few weeks. Something that I have been working on for a long time and got delayed. It was going to happen, then got delayed because of editors being drafted to coronavirus teams. And basically, thankfully, I was able to use everything we talked about on this show as kind of an argument why this is our opening to be able to get the article through, which is good, because I had been waiting on this one for a while. So should have a few things coming. Of course, podcast Between the Sheets, myself and Chris Elmer every week, pick a week in wrestling history and go over how it was covered and all that. And we also got our Patreon where we do deep dives on bigger topics, going through the long-term coverage, just had a new show go up. And we also we put up one of our past deep dives on the free feed. So if people want to hear what the Patreon shows sound like, then they can check that out as well.
All right. David Bixenspan, thank you so much for joining me tonight, buddy. Stay safe. Hope you come on again soon. I'm sure you will. If those stories are like you've built them up, then buddy, you better come on this show because I'm dying to know what you're talking about.
We'll talk off air. I'm trying to figure out in my head right now how much of them are like specific to Doomed, but we'll see.
All right, cool. Have a good night, man.
Same to you.
Peace. Bloop, bloop. All right, folks, let's go straight to the second half of the show. You can support this show by going to patreon.com/MattBinder. We were literally two patrons away from hitting the goal. And then the first of the month came and we lost 4 patrons. It happens, especially during this crisis. I totally understand. So if you gotta jump. But if you I'm having a mental block right now. If you cannot afford to become a member, that's totally cool. If you can, please do so. Otherwise, that's the deal. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'm exhausted. But we'll do a short member show because I want to give my members a little something. YouTube.com/MattBinder. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. DoomedPod.com for the audio podcast. You can also get the audio podcast from iTunes, Google Play, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave an iTunes review. Tell your favorite YouTubers, podcasters about that you want to see me on their show. Tell me about your favorite YouTubers and podcasters so I could have them on this show. If you want to come on this show, again, I actually have a spreadsheet now. I'm going to have the first guest from that open call for people to come on the show during this pandemic. I'm having my first guest from that on next week. I hope to do another one of those next week, too. I'd like to do 2 of those next week because they should be fun, shoot the shit type shows. They're not going to be nothing. I already have this next guest has a real story to tell me in terms of what he's been doing. And I probably would have had this person on regardless of his answering my open call. But it's, these shows are going to be interesting in terms of I think we might cover some things that we don't usually. Although, again, this next one is a bad example because it's definitely something we would have covered on this show. Well, it's late, guys. I'm tired. It's been a long 2 months. What else? I think that's it. Oh, let me read the patrons. Oh, the super chats. We're all from Renee today. Happy May Day. And then he sent me a link to how China is holding Sanda Sancho matches during the pandemic. They're doing combat sports during the pandemic and how they're doing it. Thank you, Renee. And the patrons. The show doesn't exist without you guys. I'm doing it in reverse order this time, so we get the people who usually stuck at the end at the beginning. Zoe G, Wootopian, Why That Thai Guy, Tom M, Tina M, This Is Not Pizza, Terrence R, Tamney G, TM, Steve A, Stephen S, Stephen R, Silicone Baby, Sheena A, Sean H, Seth K, Scott R, Ryan, Remy S, Rad Dad, Custer, Penelope D, Paul M, Odeth, Null Style, Namde Net, Nicole A, NS, Mr. Danks, Michael M, Michael J, Michael B, Mitch V, User Me, Max W, Mark S, Mariah, Lisa D, Kaushal, Katie S, Justin S, Joyce M, Joseph R, Joseph H, Jonathan B, John S, John B, JLS, Jeremy M, Jasmine H, Janelle A, Jamison Test, Jacob W, Jack D, Igor D, Hitesh, Grim L, Greg D, Gray Wind, FTW, Free Hat, Fraz K, Eugene B, Dragon Slayer, Douglas V, Doug H, Daya, David Z, Dave K, Dank Uger, Dan K, User D, Cynthia J, CT, A, Cracker Barrel, Connor R, Colin R, Cindy G, Christine H, Chris F, Champagne Kami, Brosnan, Bobby M, Benji, Ben, Baka, Ari R, Angela, Andrew H, Andrew C, Amanda H, Alan B, Adam Q, and Abigail T. All right, folks, stick around for the Patreon half. Otherwise, see you all next time on Doomed. All right, guys, we're back. No need for the long pause. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. So, yeah. Oh, sorry, Zoe. You were first today, though. Zoe said she likes being last on the patron list of patron read. Hope you guys enjoyed that show. It was something, obviously. It's a wrestling episode, but one that fit right into mainstream news, the coronavirus, politics with Trump and DeSantis. I mean, my dad pointed out that show I did with David Starr a couple months ago was 3.5 hours long. I thought it was 2 hours. I guess it was 3.5 hours long. Good. Let me go through some of the comments here. Right, there were some issues at the beginning, but I told you, me and Bixenspan had a few backup plans, and one of the first one we tried worked with the Skype on his phone, because he had warned me that he had some bad internet connection issues, being that he just moved into a new apartment. Renee says, you saw the Alex Jones cannibal clip? I did. Should I pull it up? Let me see if I could get it on the... Let's see if I could pull it up here, and I'll put it on so you guys can all hear it. Alright, this one should do. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. And if you're listening to the podcast, of course, you can... Gonna hit play. 1 second. Alright, here it is.
I'll admit it. I will eat my neighbors. I'm not letting my kids die. I'm just going to be honest. My superpower is being honest. I've extrapolated this out, and I won't have to for a few years since I got food and stuff. But I'm literally looking at my neighbors now and going, I'm ready to hang them up and gut them and skin them and chop them up. And you know what? I'm ready. My daughters aren't starving to death. I'll eat my neighbors. See, my superpower is being honest. I'll eat your ass. I will. I'm combat model, optimum self-sufficiency, probably the leader. The point is have you thought about that yet? Because I'm somebody that thought I could fix this, and I'm starting to think about having to eat my neighbors. You think I like sizing up my neighbor, how I'm going to haul him up by a chain and chop his ass up? I'll do it. My children aren't going hungry. I will eat your ass. And that's why I want the globalists to know. I will eat your ass first.
That's my new my pickup line. Just that's not even coming from me. Just slide on into someone's vision. Pull up that clip on your phone. Hold it up to them. I will eat your ass. It's so stupid. You know, I saw a lot of people talking about Alex Jones is that video is proof of people melting down. Alex Jones is doing just fine. That's not a meltdown. Alex Jones is doing his thing, man. That's all show. That's a gimmick. That's you're watching a show there. The meltdowns are the unplanned people who are really losing their mind. Alex Jones knows what he's doing. Alex Jones knows what he's doing. Renee said he's ready to eat his neighbor's ass. Right. Yep. All right. I mean, I don't know what's going on that he's in Austin, Texas, right? He's somewhere in Texas. I don't know what's going on where Alex Jones lives, that he needs to resort to eating his neighbor's ass. But, I mean, I haven't really worried about food here. I mean, obviously, if you're talking about money, which Alex Jones isn't, Alex Jones is just doing just fine. Obviously, if you're running low on money, food is an issue. But in terms of like availability of food, I haven't seen any problems with that. Yeah, things are selling out at the grocery stores, but it's not like they're just empty. Maybe you got to pick up something you don't usually eat, or something you don't like, or something. Maybe you got to try something new. All the takeout places and fast food places that are open around here, none of them have been pulling anything off the menu because they're running short of stock or anything like that. I mean, I've seen things about certain meat, beef factories and things like that, Tyson. But I mean, we're not talking about food in general. We're talking about specific food. If we actually run out of food in general, then we have a problem. But I don't see that. Yeah. Zoe says wrestlers have such fucked up bodies. They get screwed up, man. All right. Renee says, how odd how Trump hasn't invested in it since he wanted an NFL alternative. Talking about the XFL, right? My dad says XFL was getting good ratings. Right, it was. It was doing much better than the first iteration of it. And so he says, Linda McMahon is at the head of a Trump pack? Straight up. Yeah. So he's disappointed that WWE laid off No Way Jose. Right. Dorian said, when I mentioned how Trump became president for me, when he shouted out Triple H, Dorian said, Matt's loyalty bought for such a cheap price. Holy City was upset with Bixenspan about the reference to being hit by a car. Wrestlers get body slammed, it's equivalent to getting hit by a car. He said, that's bullshit. I've been hit by a car going 30 miles per hour. This idiot is talking out of his ass. Thumbs down and adios. Woo. My dad says, I wonder what the people who said, why should a supermarket shelf stocker or cashiers get $15 an hour if these people weren't on the job? Right. Oh, we got David Bixenspan in the chat. He goes, Cena. So he says we got a special guest in the chat. David says, the show sucked, bro. Dude, if you wanted to keep talking about other stuff, you should have stayed on. We could have done the second half of the show. David says, there's no way Alex Jones eats ass. Oh, man. Yeah. There's no way. Oh, David says not hit by a car in a 30-mile-per-hour accident. The jolt/whiplash. Right. Right, that is what you said. Which means this guy misinterpreted it. Zoe says, okay, but why does Triple H spit water? David, do you want to get back on the line here and answer this question for Zoe? I could recall you right now. Could be pretty funny. I'm going to try to just call you. I'm going to do it. I'm calling David right now. See if he wants to get back on. All right, well, he's not answering. But David, if you see this, feel free to call me and answer the question for Zoe. Why does Triple H spit water? Oh, we got it. Hello. Welcome back to the show. David Bixenspan, ladies and gentlemen. Zoe is asking me. Listener Zoe, very, very, very loyal member of the program, loyal listener of the program, always in the live streams, member of the show. Why does Triple H spit water? Wait. Don't say a word yet, David. I am pulling you up on the feed. I almost forgot to pull you up. Good thing you have said nothing of any value yet. You've just been going yes, yep, yeah. David, welcome back to the show.
Okay.
Now you're on air. Why does Triple H spit water?
To get to the other side.
It's so corny, but I loved it. That was so bad, but it was so great at the same time.
It's a thing. I mean, he's overly hydrated, and then when he gets to the ring, he's like, I'm going to get water poisoning and die if I drink more, so I have to spit this so I don't get water poisoning while I wrestle.
Right. All right, David. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a good night. Now, if you have a minute, you want to stick around for a little bit more? We could talk about non-wrestling stuff.
Sure. But also, no, I did not say get hit by a car.
Right. That guy misunderstood. I was just reading the comments and I didn't even... But I was honestly... I usually would skip... No, actually I wouldn't. I read everything. But I wasn't even paying attention to that part of it. The funny part to me was adios, thumbs down. Thumbs down and adios. So he thumbs down to the live stream on YouTube and he just left the show. He left watching. All because of you.
By the way, it's weird because I wasn't doing this earlier. It's weird to be able to pull up, like, have the stream and see you in your void, but then also see you with the green screen on the Skype call.
Right, because people who don't know this, because they haven't been guests on the show, through Skype, David just sees the green screen. The program actually doing the chroma keying is the live stream program that you all see. That's the feed you guys get. He gets the raw Skype feed. Although I now can give my guests that feed, but honestly, unless they need to, like I did with Jared Holt when we were watching the same YouTube feed for the QAnon film, I like to just minimal type of stuff going on the computer and through the internet connection, just so I'm not straining anything.
Right.
So David.
Right, like earlier, you weren't sending me video.
Right.
For example.
Right, but if you had to watch that Alex Jones clip, if you were on then, I could have totally shown you the clip while I was watching it too. I think I'm really gonna start doing a show where it's just me watching clips from the week or something, because that's a good idea. That Jared Holt episode did really good numbers, and not even just good numbers in terms of people jumping in to watch. Like YouTube tells you, how many people watched it, how many people were watching at the same time, but it also tells you how long people watched. And I can't even begin to tell you how many people stuck around for the majority, if not all, of our 2 hours and 45 minutes watching that film.
Oh, wow.
Literally was insanity for a show of this size, at least on YouTube. I am shocked still at how many people watched it through and through. So I think that might be the new route of this program, at least for the live stream, is me watching clips and perhaps with the guests sometimes and just dunking on them. It's a little bit hard because I got to be careful with what clips I show. That QAnon movie was the perfect movie to do it for because they couldn't do any sort of copyright claims on them because they themselves did not own copyright for 99% of that film.
That's always good.
Yeah, but that might be a route to go. That might be a new special episode that I do for Doomed. But David, now that you're on the show, I
Yes.
was going to talk about, back on the show, I was going to talk about this. I saw you are involved in this discourse online.
Okay.
It's not wrestling related.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll be talking about it a lot more, but it's good to have someone different on the show to talk about it
Okay.
with, meaning you. Today, Joe Biden went on Morning Joe to talk about the allegations of sexual assault
Oh, you're just dropping this on me. Okay.
for the first time. And I've seen you getting at it with people
No, I'm
online.
kidding. I
Right.
didn't think that was where you were going with it. But it's fine.
Right. What would you think I was going with it when I said Joe Biden was on Morning Joe this morning?
No, before you got to Joe Biden.
Oh, okay. Because it took you a little bit. I thought you'd say that right at the moment I said Joe Biden. But I went, Joe Biden was on Morning Joe this morning and talked about the sexual assault allegations. And that's when you went, oh, come on. That's when you're dropping this on me. Which made it sound like you did not know where I was going with Joe Biden went on Morning Joe this morning. Okay. But let's just get to it.
Yeah.
What is your feelings about all of this? Because I should start with mine. So because it's my show, I'm putting you on the spot. Let me give you a few moments to get your thoughts together.
Sure.
I think straight up, this is the first time I'm talking about this on this program. I've been talking about it on Twitter. When I heard the allegations in the beginning, my first thought after looking things over, looking her up, Tara Reid up, reading the allegations, understanding things, my first thought, once I got this all together and formed a thought, was I believe her. Because as a leftist, when anyone comes out with these sort of allegations, you know what they're doing to themselves. This is not something to take lightly. They're literally putting their career, their livelihood, their personal lives on the line here to do something at this level. So that's obviously my first thought. I believe her. I waited a little bit to start talking about it because I did want more confirmation to come out.
And because it did surface via the podcast and not proper reporting. When I say reporting, I mean journalism reporting, not for reporting it to someone.
And this is nothing against Katie, who broke the story. I think she does great work, and obviously she did amazing work here. But I guess the thought is that someone at this level who's accusing the presumptive Democratic nominee would be able to break through to a mainstream media outlet first, and obviously that would be their first choice to go with.
Yeah.
But absolute props and kudos to Katie for getting the story, going with it, and really her interview with Tara Reid it really gets it all out there. I mean, we know what the allegations are because of that interview. And
from an interviewing perspective, it wasn't as much as just like the things about the corroboration and all that was not handled when it's something that from a journalistic perspective you would have wanted that earlier.
Right. But I think from what we knew and the way you can go about it with a podcast like this as a journalist, independent journalist, I think it was extremely well done. And yes, I guess she could have waited, but I think that we were at a point where this story wasn't being taken seriously. Tara Reid was saying things online about it, just not in that explicit detail. And no one from the major media outlets were touching it. And I feel like the corroboration from these secondary outside third-party sources would not have been gotten from anyone really but these major media outlets, because most people who don't, if it's not their personal story, I mean, what are they going to, how are they going to be found? And then on top of that, what trust level is there for them to tell it? Like someone like Tara, it's her personal story. She's not getting it out there. No one is reaching out to her. No one is biting. She will take that that leap. She will,
Yes.
take that risk of going to a outlet that is just a podcast with a leftist bent too. So it's it's an extra risk to take. And again, no dissing Katie at all. That's just the reality of it from a mainstream perspective in our news media industry as it is today. I wish it wasn't the case. I wish the common everyday news reader looked at a leftist podcast who did rigorous reporting and work to get you that reporting. I wish they were taken with the same seriousness as ABC News, NBC News, CNN, MSNBC. I wish. But the reality of the situation is that they're not at this point in time.
Right.
So I looked up this information. I read this information. I got additional corroborating information. And I truly think that something happened here, obviously. And I believe Tara Reid. And I think that at this point, with that additional corroboration from the neighbor, I mean, the neighbor is just, she has no reason for coming out and saying this. She is a completely, seemingly neutral party. She's not like a good friend of Tara Reid. She lived by Tara Reid, and they were friendly when they lived next to each other. And she was told this. She herself says she was told this in 95 or 96. Tara Reid's allegations of what Joe Biden did to her are from 93. The neighbor herself says she's the Joe Biden supporter who plans on voting for Joe Biden because obviously he's the Democratic nominee at this point, presumptive Democratic nominee at this point. And this woman seems like she's one of those types who really wants to get rid of Trump and is willing to do anything to do so. So for her, she's fine with voting for Joe Biden if the means comes to the ends there. I mean, it's weird to hear after she says what she says to her say she's a Joe Biden supporter still and she's going to vote for him. But it is what it is. In fact, I think that even adds extra legitimacy to her coming out and saying this. Yeah. I think the reaction from people online, Democrats specifically, has been truly demented, disgusting, and gross. And depressing. To the point where I even, listen, if somehow things fall apart with this story and it comes out that she and this is a scenario I'm bringing up. I want to reiterate, I believe her. But I'm going to give a scenario here because I have a point to make. That has nothing to do with her being trustworthy or not. If it comes out that she's misremembering or the story isn't as she's being told and it ends up not being the allegations she's claiming. If that scenario happens, I will have no regrets about anything I said because everything I have said has to do with the disgusting nature of how people are treating her. And you can question what she is saying. You can say, I'm still not on board with believing her completely because there's some, iffiness here, there, and here. You could say these things without just being a dick and an asshole and just throwing the idea that this is a serious accusation and it needs to be treated delicately just completely out the window. What we're seeing is people attacking her. We see people using Republican talking points when it happens to Republicans being thrown out there by Democrats. We're seeing just bizarre points being brought up in her life and what she's said that have nothing to do with the allegations being used to discredit her. There's just no basis for these things right now. And again, you don't have to be on board with this yet. You don't have to completely, if you're a Joe Biden supporter, say Joe Biden's a disgusting piece of shit because of these allegations yet, if you don't believe this stuff. You can question these things without doing that. That requires you to do work, investigate it, which obviously these people aren't going to do. there's journalists who are looking into this stuff, obviously, who could possibly come up with something that pokes a real hole in the story, and perhaps things aren't being shared as they are said. But we are not there yet, and we might never be there yet. And everything we hear now, truthfully, seems really, I don't know what else to say other than this all sounds like it's been vetted and has happened, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I'm honestly, it shouldn't be surprising, I guess, but it still has shocked me to see some of these talking. Let me just throw some out there. I've seen the fact that she spoke highly of Vladimir Putin being used against her. Listen, I don't know what was going on with her there. Doesn't matter what was going on with her there during that time where she liked Vladimir Putin. She said she was wrong, obviously, and she's read work that shows that, she's learned how horrible he is and whatever.
Well, okay, here's the thing with this, though. With the Putin thing, most of the people who bring it up appear to be actually, more so like hashtag resistance types than others, but still, it seems like a majority of people who are bringing up the Putin thing outside of like a context of here are all the reasons I'm questioning this are actually suggesting she is like compromised by Russia, which it's like, no, they are, just because they've had a few shitty bots that you've interacted with doesn't mean that they would be so dumb as to pick a person who is writing Putin fanfic for this.
That's a great point, right? Exactly. But I'm even looking at it from the perspective of, shit, man, she could be a foreign agent here. She could, literally, she could be exactly who they think she is. But if she was actually sexually assaulted by anyone, that does not discredit that. It just doesn't.
Right,
I'm
right.
sorry.
That's on top of everything else. Yes, there's a theoretic, if you wanted to just say, just hypothetically, oh, maybe someone from Russia got to her because they saw she had a story and they figured maybe there was more to it, or maybe they even heard through some grapevine, whatever, but it doesn't matter. Here's one of the many things that did it. You don't have to believe her.
Right.
But you have to recognize that by the standards of how these things are usually looked at journalistically, it's now looking fairly solid.
Right. And again, it could completely fall apart in some way. And there is nothing that we are saying that would be inaccurate, because and it's everything to do with still the people who are saying this stuff being disgusting, because if this story does fall apart somehow, it will not be because of any of the reasons these resistance or Dems are saying. There's none of what they're putting out there pokes a single hole in her story. I want to continue with some of this stuff that's been going out there. We have the Russia thing. We have the story about how her dad wrote a book where in the book, one of the characters has their skirt lifted up and they're digitally penetrated, which is very similar to what Tara Reid says Joe Biden did to her in 93. That is like the most general description of one of the most common forms I can possibly think of what women come out when they say they're raped, how they are raped. I mean, that's a story that wouldn't surprise me if hundreds of thousands of women have experienced. They were without consent, their skirt was lifted, and they were touched. I mean, I don't know how that at all, that there's a similar, it's the most basic story there is. I mean, in this realm. And on top of that, the dad's book was actually written a couple of years after the neighbors claiming she was told about this story.
Right.
So that destroys it to begin with. But I just want to focus on the idea that what's another tale as old as time when it comes to sexual assault, stories of sexual assault? A woman getting raped at a frat party on a college campus. Oh, it already happened to one woman we cannot ever believe a woman was raped at a party on a college campus before ever again, because it's already happened before. I mean, that's really where we're gonna go with this.
There are two things I think that have kind of blown my mind the most throughout all this. One is when we've seen, I mean, outlets too, but especially individual reporters and editors tweeting their stories. Like, I'm mainly thinking of John Cook, who's the investigations editor of Business Insider, who's a friend of mine.
And listen, for people who aren't familiar, he's somebody who has done a lot of work in this area of these hard to touch investigative pieces. Stories that are very iffy to tell because of various legal issues and things like that. And him being on this story, in my view, really does add an extra layer of legitimacy to those to the neighbors' claims.
Yes. The number of replies I see, and I feel like, especially because it's like, if you're looking at John Cook's Twitter, maybe you saw it retweeted somewhere else, but I feel like if you are following John Cook on Twitter or following someone that is retweeting John Cook, if you don't have an idea who he is, you're at least getting enough of a temperature to not think he's a conservative or whatever. But you see all these replies that are like either, now do Trump, what about looking into all of Trump's 26 allegations? You're just doing this to get by. I mean, not even that specific. Like it's all that over and over. Like, one, like, have you literally ever seen John tweet or write anything before? But also, like, how is that your reaction?
Right.
I mean, like, obviously, would I like to see more time spent on some of the Trump stuff? And honestly, yes. And there's some stuff that, even with the coverage it got, did not get covered well enough. And the one I always think of is this. Jill Harth was one of Trump's most vocal accusers.
Who, I'm sorry, you cut out when you said her name. I'm sorry.
Oh, Jill Harth.
Right.
And she came out months before the Access Hollywood tape. What she described matched exactly what he described on the Access Hollywood tape. And I don't remember ever seeing a single outlet, at least a major one, address that ever. Once.
Right.
Like, yeah, that stuff, honestly, there is stuff, even from what's out there, that could get scrutinized more. There are ways that could be a legitimate point. It's not a legitimate response to people reporting on this story at all.
It is not.
And
no.
it's now, granted, I don't necessarily see that from people that I would have any, like, those aren't usually people with followings or anything, or of any renown that I'm seeing.
No, I'm seeing there are definitely people who have. Listen,
I'm talking more about the reply guy type, not necessarily people. But you are seeing people that you wouldn't necessarily expect to go with the now do Trump kind of.
Dean Abdallah, who has a show on Sirius XM. He was doing that this morning with the Trump, the number of Trump accusers and everything. Not at all cool. I don't know why people think that's a proper response. Yes, people should still be supporting the women who have alleged Trump has done these things to them. I 100% believe these women too. It is appalling that Trump became president with all these women saying that they were sexually assaulted by him. That does not make it right that everyone who comes after Trump should also get the same pass. That does not make it right that all women who come after Trump who are alleging that other men did things to them should also be ignored in the same ways that some of these women who allege Trump assaulted them are ignored. Not at all.
It doesn't mean these reporters haven't been looking into Trump.
The thing with Trump is that it's harder because he's had so much time to hide this shit. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, but and also like I'm not saying this to be for any specific reporter. Like, it wouldn't shock me if there's some people that are just so fatigued by thinking nothing will work unless they have like a video. Like, You know, like I could see that, but I also don't think that's what's happening either. It's just like it's people just using this as a bullshit response.
Right.
The
For
other
sure.
thing, and the one that honestly, this is the one that's actually I feel like surprised me. The collective amnesia about Biden's history and the discussion thereof as far as his public creepiness, and I'm trying to figure out the best word to use. I mean, generally, I had been using lack of respect for bodily autonomy as kind of the
That's
catch-all,
honestly the perfect, really a perfect description of it.
which also, as another thing, even when people were covering that stuff, especially last year, like if you Google, you'll barely find any articles that use the term bodily autonomy talking about Biden, even talking about Lucy Flores and the Reid allegations from last year and the other stuff that came along with it. But, like, Daily Show did a segment about this over 5 years ago, February 2015, where they used the word grope repeatedly, and this was stemming from, I'm forgetting her name, when the ceremony or whatever it was where he's behind the woman and he puts his hands on her shoulders and starts kind of rubbing them for like 30 seconds.
Right.
And they're like going through all the clips and the stuff with the little girls. And again, they're using the word grope. And I mean, it's Daily Show, but Daily Show has a certain style. They're not going to use the word grope if they don't mean it. And it's like, it feels like both in the general public and on the legacy media side, it's treated as A, this doesn't matter, and B, everyone's just kind of forgetting about that this was a thing that bordered on national embarrassment already. And look, I know there are a lot of people saying that it's not a big, even some of the women who came forward about him last year were saying they didn't think it was a sexual thing on his part, that it was genuinely him not having boundaries and just being a more generally touchy-feely person. But some of them, but smelling hair, like, and again, like rubbing shoulders with, and some of the stuff with people you just met, it's like, if he's doing that, let's just be straight. It is not a shock that Joe Biden would sexually assault anyone.
Right.
It really isn't.
Right. I just want to add too that those things, while a real issue in its own right, necessarily because Joe Biden is touchy and feely with people like that, doesn't necessarily mean he would that he also would go on to do something like what Tara Reid is claiming. However,
it doesn't mean he would, but it means.
But it doesn't. But yeah, like, you know, that could have happened without what she's alleging. But it makes it sort of in someone's character in terms of, it wouldn't be surprising to find out that someone who did these things would also go about taking that next step.
I mean, what has part of Reid's story been? She thinks he thought he had consent.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, and that kind of fits with that. So, I generally, like, the thing that I can wrap my head around the least is just the acting like this stuff that this was not already considered an issue before last year, that it's not something in the same general area. I mean, if someone really wants to, you know, people have been talking about, you know, trying to defend him using his push for the Violence Against Women Act and stuff. But if you actually look for articles about Biden that use the term bodily autonomy, most of them are about abortion rights and how he had been not exactly coming around on abortion rights until recently. And if someone really wanted to, what my point is, someone could make an argument that someone who doesn't have respect for bodily autonomy, women's bodily autonomy, is just not going to have respect for their bodily autonomy in more than one way. Right.
It's a great point. But also, he could love and respect women. He could have been the strongest supporter for the Violence Against Women Act. He could have been the first supporter out there shouting for women's abortion rights. None of that means that this woman's story is not real, that she's not telling what happened. She's not telling the truth. I always hate that. And it's something the Republicans always do. And it's disgusting enough as it is to see Democrats do it too. When a woman claims that one of these politicians sexually assaulted them, they trot out all the other women who have ever met this individual who say, well, he's never done that to me, as if that matters, as if a rapist just goes around sexually assaulting every single woman they've ever met. No. I mean, none of this means that what this woman's saying isn't true. And then there's also the serial aspect of it, that this is the only woman to ever come out and say that Biden went the full-on sexual assault penetration with. But listen, just because it's not as common, again, doesn't mean it didn't happen. I mean, none of this is...
Yeah, the number of prominent people acting like that's dispositive is bizarre.
And listen, I'm still saying there's still enough out there where if you're one of these people who wants to find holes in this story, there are certainly many things you could look into to see if that part of it pans out or if there's a hole in the story. But what we're seeing right now is a solid story. It's disgusting to see these fake holes being like these fake gotchas. Oh, I saw today how the difference, because a lot of people are comparing how Republicans treated the Kavanaugh allegations to how Democrats are treating these Biden allegations.
Yeah.
There is a weird talking point that Tara Reid is somehow less legitimate or I forgot exactly what it was. Let me find the exact phrasing because I want to make sure.
I've seen it taken in so many different directions that this is I haven't even bothered to engage anyone on Twitter about it because I'm honestly not even sure who's arguing what.
Christine Blasey Ford was a more credible accuser than Tara Reid. By what metric? What makes her a more credible accuser? Because all I'm seeing right now is I see two very legitimate, credible stories. I believe Blasey Ford. I believe Tara Reid. I've seen that Kavanaugh went ape shit and handled it very badly. Very true. I see them bring up how Biden is handling it with calm and gentleness. Okay. So Biden handles it better. What is that? That again, this doesn't mean anything. Maybe it means something to the same people who brought out who brought out a body language interpreter to somehow say that Bernie Sanders was lying about Elizabeth Warren, saying he said that she could have become president. I mean, maybe that matters to those people. And that brings up another thing. The idea that this is all just a ruse for Bernie Sanders. Listen, I don't give a shit about this. We're done with that. Bernie's already endorsed Biden. Would I like to see Joe Biden drop out because of these allegations and a new nominee who doesn't have these allegations leveled at them become the presumptive nominee? I think that's probably for the best if we want to see Trump gone. Do I think that they would pick Bernie Sanders? No. Do I think the person who has the next most delegates should probably be picked? Yes, but I don't believe her because of that. I mean, honestly, if you believing Tara Reid means that Kamala Harris or Beto O'Rourke or someone like that needs to take place, I mean, that's not what I think would be the right thing in terms of the primary process, but it'd be the right thing in terms of better than Biden, who has these allegations. I mean, quite honestly, if the meeting point is we need someone who isn't Bernie for you to believe these Joe Biden allegations and get a replacement, then, I mean, I guess we'll do that. I mean, it's preferable to me, honestly, because it's not about the primary to me. I mean, honestly, I don't know how people can be publicly endorsing Joe Biden at this point. I mean, even if I don't get it. I don't get it. Listen, I voted for Hillary Clinton in the general election. She had a lot of baggage. I think the connections to her husband in terms of the things that she said about the people who have accused her husband of sexual assault didn't sit right with me, but I'm not going to blame her for those sexual assaults because that's not on her. I was able to vote for her. I was able to vote for Hillary Clinton. Before these allegations, I probably would have ended up voting for Joe Biden. Very likely voting for Joe Biden in the general election. I was one of those proponents I'm someone who's a proponent for not playing that hand until the last minute so you could extract as much concession as possible. I would have been consistently saying how Joe Biden doesn't have my vote, even if I had planned on voting for him, just so I could be one of those people who, another voice in calling for those concessions to the left. But with these allegations, I mean, I wouldn't vote for Trump, but can I vote for someone with these allegations? It'd be very hard. It'd be very hard.
I mean, we live in New York, though, so I mean, obviously, it could. Who knows what kind of numbers it would take for that to matter in the grand scheme of things? But I mean, I get what you're saying. There's something I was forgetting. Oh, this is not specific to this case because we hear this all the time, but it really struck me just the stupidity of, oh, she's coming along now. Clearly she's coming out because of the campaign. It's like, yes, that's actually a perfectly legitimate motive if you're in someone's shoes who was assaulted. Right. Like, they'll say, well, he was vice president for 8 years. Vice president is a largely ceremonial position.
Well, she's already explained that. She's already explained that too. She has two reasons.
Well, also in the Obama part, yes, that she felt that it would also submarine Obama in a way that
she liked Obama.
Wasn't good,
said. Right?
And she liked Obama a lot. Yeah.
And also, she said at the time she had a teenage daughter, and she didn't want that to affect her.
Yes.
But
on top of that, vice president is a largely ceremonial position. He was the vice president for a fairly young, healthy president.
Right.
It's not the same thing.
Right. I mean, also 2008. I don't know if people really remember how 2008 was. 2008 culturally was a very different world. I don't think people realize just how much has changed in just the past couple of years. I mean, 2008. The Me Too movement wouldn't rise to prominence for another 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't safe to come out in 2008 and level these sort of accusations.
Who would even be the most prominent woman to come out with sexual assault allegations against a politician, prominent man, or whatever, that got the most modern open arms reaction before the Me Too moment? Like, who really? I mean, it doesn't have to be at the level of what we would expect. That which is still ultra skeptical and skewed anyway. But like, who?
Are you talking about allegations where the women were believed, or just major allegations in general?
Let's say something that where the woman was actually believed more than most.
Well, this is a slightly different case because we're not talking about consensual, consenting and adults, but probably Michael Jackson. And again, even then, there were a lot of people who the general public, I think, believed that he did it, but I think there was still a large number of people who believed that he didn't.
Yes. And then, but especially if we're talking about years after the fact, though, because the earlier Michael Jackson allegations were fairly recent at the time. So
I can't think for that example. Maybe this isn't an accurate example to what you're asking, but Bill Clinton, people believe that. But I mean, look what they did to poor Monica. I mean, it wasn't like she got it worse than Bill.
Yeah, it does feel like, but I mean, even with the more, the actual rape allegations in Clinton, or even Paula Jones, it does. does feel like people were inclined to believe the Clinton accusers, and I can't really put my finger on what of the moment was the reason for that.
Oh, right. You're right. I mean, Juanita Broderick has a very solid story,
Yes.
and she's been completely ignored in terms of. I mean, people treat her like she's some sort of conspiratorial figure or something. I've never understood that. Just because she's a Republican now. I mean, she has if you look into her claims, she's got a solid allegation against him.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I guess it's just literally like, because Clinton's the one that's coming to mind as like, it seems like his accusers were generally believed, and it's not even just like in a party line way either. And I can't put my finger on why.
No, it's definitely in a party line way. I mean, there are definitely many Dems who love Bill Clinton.
I'm saying,
I mean,
I feel like Democrats were more inclined to believe Clinton's accusers than they are anyone. I mean, Tara Reid specifically, but also someone who would come out against a Biden now.
I mean, Bill Clinton was on the DNC stage. I mean, obviously for Hillary, but they rolled him out in 2012 as the main event for Obama's reelection, if you remember.
I mean, at the time, though, like that's forgetting all the weird bullshit like mass amnesia we're talking about. Like we were talking about with the Biden groping and stuff too. Like maybe it's also just late, and I'm kind of losing my point. But
right.
Anyway, but it's why do you think though that the groping, boundary overstepping, lack of respect for bodily autonomy stuff? Why do you think we're seeing such a disregard for that as a story, as something that could be relevant to Reid's allegations, as something that was a problem, as something that came up in his past that's a problem? Like, why are we seeing such a disregard for that from legacy media specifically?
I think there's a number of reasons. I'm not so hung up on that, honestly, because I think it doesn't matter to those allegations. I don't. So that's why I really am sort of.
I mean, even on their own, just as a thing.
I constantly see, he was an older guy, and the touchy-feeliness sort of thing was more accepted during those generations as a show of care and tenderness or whatever. The idea that, because a lot of those times, if you look how he's treating them, it's very,
go get him, tiger, kind of.
Yeah, like sort of like
some of it, not all of it, but some of it.
Very demeaning. Very what's the word I'm looking for? Submissive. That's another thing. A lot of times then, the idea like the 50s, was all about the man comes home and the woman's got the dinner ready from on the table. Like women are like a pet. Or like a sidekick to the man, and the man. So a lot of times he's rubbing her shoulders next to him, like she's some sort of prop for him. And listen, I don't know what he could mean nothing by it, but the fact is it's inappropriate now. Should have been inappropriate then, and he should have respected that was the case. He was very non-apologetic about it for a very long time. He joked about it on numerous occasions,
including last year after it was becoming more of an issue.
Right. Like, again, I'm not alleging that this guy went out there for all these years and was copping a feel on women because he thought he could get away with it. I would honestly believe that he didn't realize what he was doing, which doesn't make it any better. In fact, I would say it's kind of worrisome in a very different way. But yeah, you could think he was doing that without some sort of demonic reasoning behind it.
Sure. Yeah.
I also think that these allegations, from what even Tara Reid said, it sounded like he thought she wanted it. And for no reason other than he felt like she was into him. And that's sort of really, that's sort of similar to why you would just rub on a woman's shoulders. You think she would like it. You know what I mean? Like, it's very weird. I would never do anything like that. I mean,
Right.
That's which weird to me, but I'm from a different generation too. But yeah, that's if you're looking for an answer, that seems to be the sort of why people throw that off to the side.
But it's not purely like a Gen Z millennial thing though, because think back to like every like once there was more like awareness of sexual harassment, think back to like every PSA to every TV show storyline, and how many of them started with the boss rubbing the subordinate woman's shoulders.
Right.
Like it's not like this isn't something that would have been seen still as a potential issue even 25 years ago.
Right. Right. I mean, listen, I don't get why it's so easy for people to dismiss this. I understand, even if you like Joe Biden, that it's hard to believe, and she's not the perfect victim. None of them are. There's always some sort of hole or something you could find wrong with these women who allege that they were sexually assaulted. And you know why there's always something with them? Because they're human, and there's something wrong with everybody. The only reason you're finding something wrong with the only reason you're putting that issue with them on a pedestal is because of the accusations they've made. I mean, it's just. I mean, literally, I could understand if you're someone who's like, listen, I'm just not at the point where I believe it 100% yet. I think there's something there. Obviously, I still like Biden. But I'm concerned about this. And I think more should be done before I come with an opinion about it. I get that.
Yes.
I get that. And if that's how you think, then fine. But to come up with these bullshit reasons to attack this person and these false, these fake poking holes into the story that have no bearing on the legitimacy of the story whatsoever, it's just gross. It's just absolutely gross. And I mean, all we can really say is keep paying attention to what comes of it, because there's obviously more is going to come out. We have those papers, the complaint that she says she filed. Apparently, no one knows where this complaint is. The idea that she wouldn't have this paper from '93 is not surprising. I don't know why this is some sort of gotcha. Again, this is some great unveil to some people. It's really,
you would hope they would try to get a copy, but honestly, even for important shit like that, people would not always do that, especially back then.
Like there's also the whole thing where she doesn't mention that he assaulted her, that she made him feel uncomfortable, is what the alleged complaint is about. I mean, what he did fits under that category. And think about it. If you were a young woman who was just assaulted by your boss, it's probably, I'm saying probably because I haven't experienced it, but I feel pretty safe in saying it is definitely extremely embarrassing. So to use a type of wording that doesn't exactly spell out what happened, but still casts the umbrella over it, is not surprising either.
Right.
I mean, do you really? Would you really want to go around telling people the full details of the story that your boss lifted up your skirt and touched you? I mean, how insanely embarrassing is that? I mean, it shouldn't be. You should not feel embarrassed by that. You were assaulted, but you can't help it as a human to feel embarrassed about that. I'm sure. I mean, I again, it's not something I've experienced. As a man or a woman, again, men can experience this too, but I could only imagine what you go through when someone you know, especially, does this to you. It's physically, emotionally, mentally draining on so many levels. I could assume, honestly. I mean, just for a minute, imagine someone you know doing this to you. What it would do to you in every way, shape, and form. I don't know how I can't even it's unimaginable to someone who hasn't experienced it.
Yeah. But let me ask you this, since we didn't talk about this at all. Is it me, or in a way does the Larry King clip seem like the actual, as far as the corroboration, seem like the strongest?
I totally forgot to mention that here, and that's one of the other things that really bothers me. The Larry King clip is not like, to me, it's not like the hook, line, sinker. It's not, that's not the 100%, but it really strengthens her claim.
Because it's not something she could have just gone out and fabricated, short of having an extensive encyclopedic memorized knowledge of Larry King episodes in the cities people called from about
exactly. She had to have known. Now listen, she says she very vaguely knew about the details in terms of when the call was from, what Larry King show it was, stuff like that.
Right, she didn't know it was from right after she would have been gone.
Right. She came out and said, my mom called into Larry King, and she spoke about some of my issues. I think she even said that she didn't get into the specifics on the show.
Yes, and for people who don't realize that are listening, like, this is something she told reporters that did not get published until the footage was found. Like, right. This is something that I think it was Ryan Grimm was the first to mention. Like, yeah, she had mentioned this weeks ago, but it's like it's not something we were going to bring up until we were able to find proof.
So the footage came out of, it's an anonymous caller. Tara Reid said it sounds just like her mom. The Chiron says that the caller is from the exact county where her mom was living at the time.
That's right. She's right. Yes. It's a town in it, San Luis Obispo, California.
Right. It's from the exact month that was Tara Reid's last month working for the Biden office, Senator Biden's office. And she says how my daughter is having issues with her boss, and how could she go about, getting it out, discussing it. Now,
no, she says, how could she? No, she says, how can she do something short of going to the press? Basically.
Right. That's what she said. Right. Now, again, there's no specifics here. So what this really does confirm, to me, some people it doesn't confirm anything, but to me it confirms there was clearly something happening with Tara Reid and her experience working in the Biden office at that time, for her mom to call into Larry King show. I believe it's
she clearly told people that.
Yes. I believe it's her mom, because that's just way too coincidental. If she was to be lying about this, she would have had to find a Larry King tape. Again, if she's lying about it, her mom calling in doesn't exist. So she has to find a Larry King tape from the 90s.
That's not online
That's not online. Where a woman who sounds in the age range of her mom, at least, because obviously we don't know how her mom sounds. A woman who sounds in the age range of her mom at the time, living where her mom was living at the time, within the same month of all this happening, she would have to find that tape, with the possibility of it not even existing. Because again, in this Earth 2, in this scenario, her mom calling into Larry King actually does not exist.
Right.
So she has to find this tape so she could say that that's her mom.
Yeah, she has to find a Larry King that would tick off the boxes of a woman in the right age range at the right time, living in the right place, describing something that could fit her up to the point of, bringing up talking to the media, which suggests that it's some pretty heavy shit.
Right. It's certainly not impossible, but Tara Reid if this is what she's doing, then she could have got paid very handsomely as an investigative, like a private investigator or some shit like that, if she was able to pull this off. She would be fucking James Bond levels of secret agent to find this tape to match her story.
Yes.
Because remember, this isn't a new story. So it's not like she could create this story based on this tape she finds. The story has already been told to people in the 90s. It's just So again, to me, the tape doesn't confirm the exact allegation, but it absolutely confirms that Tara Reid's been telling people that Joe Biden, or her experience at Joe Biden's office, something really bad happened there in the 90s. And
Yes.
I mean, you could extrapolate whatever you want from that. But with the addition of this neighbor now, I mean, it's you need more sources. I mean, I'm sure there'll be another one, to be honest with you.
I also don't get what, like, people who, like, seem like they'd be receptive to allegations coming out in the media, like, who are, like, expect there to be, like, what do they think is possible corroborating evidence years after the fact? Too. Like, what do they think is possible besides things like told people about it at the time, or, you know, in this case also, like, maybe, you know, being demotion or whatever at work.
Well, right now they're hinging on this complaint that was filed, because they believe once it's unearthed, if it is ever unearthed, but once it's unearthed, they'll have the physical proof that all it says is what Tara Reid already told us what it says, that she was made to feel uncomfortable. But once they have that in writing in front of them, they're going to say how, oh, look, we now have proof she never said this happened then. But that's not, the paper's not going to prove anything, to be honest with you. I mean,
no, with the paper, it'll just would,
if they find it, it'll only strengthen her story a little bit in terms of, yeah, once again she was telling the truth.
And Biden and his campaign would have to answer for why they were saying this wasn't real.
Right. But
When there was a paper trail.
But at the same time, the defense will still be, it still doesn't allege the assault.
Right.
I mean, there's the only way this is going to be proved one way or another is if A, more people come out to corroborate her story who were told this throughout the timeline, or B, that person comes out with the details saying that I know she is not being truthful here because she told me, or this and this happened, or something like that. Without those two things, one of those two things, we're not going to get a resolution from either side, to be quite frank. I mean, we're at a stalemate to people who believe women who do this incredibly brave act, and people who want to defend people they like, who they can't possibly believe did this. Listen, I can tell you right now that if this came out about Bernie Sanders and he was the Democratic nominee,
God,
I would drop Bernie Sanders like that. There'd be no question about it. It'd be the simplest fucking thing in the planet. The people who think that we would be defending Bernie Sanders because they're defending Biden are out of their minds. If anyone, if a family member of mine was accused of this stuff and it was a strong allegation, that family member would be dead to me. It's that simple. I mean, it's I don't know how else to say it. I mean, this is one of the most horrendous things you could possibly do to somebody.
Yes.
I mean, obviously with family it's a little bit different. You'd probably still love the person, but they wouldn't get a pass from you. You'd probably never talk to them again or some shit like that. But we're talking about a politician here. These people who are defending Joe Biden don't fucking know Joe Biden. Like, what is your? It's, listen, in a perfect world, I wish these allegations didn't exist. I don't want this guy to be. Yeah. I don't want the presumptive Democratic nominee to have these allegations. I don't want a former vice president to have these allegations. I don't want one of the faces of the party that I'm forced to support because that's all we got in this two-party system to have these allegations. Yeah. I'm not happy about this. I'm not happy that a woman experienced. This is the number one issue, obviously. Yeah. I'm not happy a woman experienced this. But, this is just the things that we have to say because people think we're like happy as a pig in shit over these allegations because we don't like Joe Biden or some crap. It's ridiculous. People in the chat are pointing out that my James Bond reference was a really bad analogy because 007 would be a sexual assault expert.
Going through my head. A few things were going through my head about that.
Misha says Bond is misogyny personified. Renee says 007 would be a sexual assault expert. An addendum to defend myself. I hate the James Bond movies. I know little to nothing about James Bond because I hate that whole franchise. I think it bores the shit out of me from the little I've seen of it. So when I think James Bond, I literally just think secret agent, famous secret agent. So that's why I brought him up. Please, that's my defense.
Also, by the way, with Biden, I don't know who's giving him the guidance on how to handle the questions about the University of Delaware papers, but they need to get their shit together.
Well, they're purposely trying to be confusing about it. They're purposely trying to. It's quite clear.
I didn't get that vibe from the interview today, though. I got he was just ending it at, well, they wouldn't be in there, so why would anyone need to look? Which is like, but if
you can't say
Grant
that,
and right? A, that's not how that works. B, there's been reporting at Business Insider that she could have reported it to a agency that doesn't exist and may not have actually been transferred to some place that would be part of National Archive. And also, she says there were notes taken by a staffer that could theoretically have ended up with Biden's stuff.
Right.
It's not there. This goes deeper than A, she made a complaint and would go to this office, which still exists, who would have it and is part of National Archives now.
Right.
And so just also the way, he almost, I almost didn't think he was obfuscating. It almost seemed like he generally just didn't understand the concept of what was being asked.
That's one read of it. Maybe I could also see you thinking that about him specifically, but I think the people who told him what to say were being purposefully obtuse about it. Obviously, someone told him what to say because at that level, you have a bunch of people consulting with you about how to best deal with this. But yeah, that is where we're at right now. David, thank you for joining me in the second half of the show to discuss this. I know I'll be talking about this.
Pleasure's not the right word, but
my pleasure to your pleasure to I get what you're saying.
Yes. It's to be your acquaintance.
Yes, I totally get it. But I this is gonna be something I'll be talking about on the show a lot because I think it's not, to me the real there's two real issues here. Obviously, a woman who experienced this is number one. But then number two, it is extremely depressing to say that, after the Me Too movement, we were hearing so much about how much things have changed. You're going to have Monica Lewinsky out there doing interviews saying how she feels like she would have gotten a better treatment nowadays. And I think this has just rolled that all back. I think it's quite obvious that none of what people thought after Me Too is true. I think it just so happened that it was being aimed at the right people and that there are enough people out there still who are ready to just apologize for this shit. Who are apologists for this shit, I should say, and just sweep it under the rug if it's someone that they like or know. And it truly is depressing to hear. Truly, I don't know what else to say about it at this point. All right, man. Take care. Have a good night. It's 1 a.m. Get some sleep.
All right.
Peace. All right, everybody. That's today's episode of Doomed. See you all next time. What else was I say? Yeah, we'll have a show next week. Other than that, see you all next time I went long, didn't I? On Doomed. Giving you guys a lot. You lovely patrons who I love you so much. Totally worth it for you guys. See ya.